friends, welcome to Bookish Bliss, our virtual book club. Every week we will dig into a section of chapters in our favorite books. Let's get started!
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of Bookish Bliss. We have a lot to discuss today.
Yes, we do! My favorite chapters!
Yes.
This week we'll be covering chapters 45 through 55 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. There will be no spoilers beyond the covered chapters. You don't have to read the whole book to listen. You just have to be caught up on the chapters we're covering. Amanda, are we drinking tonight?
Yes, Megan, we are back on our bullshit tonight. And of course, I have Mark West.
Mark Westy.
My glass is already poured. So tell us what you're drinking tonight, Megan.
Well, I still had some ciders left over from St. Patrick's Day, and I'm even like a little Irish tonight with my sweater, even though it's no longer St. Patrick's Day. But I'm going to be drinking a Strongbow. So I'm going to open this on camera.
There you go.
There you go.
Let's go, Megan.
Let's go.
Episode 11 to Megan's favorite section of A Court of Mist and Fury.
I've been waiting for this for 12 weeks. Cheers.
Cheers. Let's get started with the good stuff and break down ACOMAF Part V. Over to you, Meg. Please summarize the set of chapters for us.
All right, just like every week, we'll be summarizing the chapters, and later in the episode, we'll be going a little deeper, especially with all the things that we have to say today. Chapter 45. These chapters open with us seeing an Illyrian war camp for the first time. We get a growly "she's mine" from Rhysand when the camp lord looks at Feyre the wrong way. We end this chapter learning the truth about what happened to Rhysand's family and the beginning of his feud with Tamlin. Chapter 46. We see some Feyre and Rhysand angst and more tension between Mor and Cassian. There is going to be another magical training day in the woods while we wait for the word of the Mortal Queens, but their session is interrupted by Lucien.
Mind blown.
Chapter 47. There is a showdown between Feyre and Lucien, and Rhysand lets Feyre stand up for herself. Feyre tells Lucien she is never, ever, ever coming back to the Spring Court, to tell Tamlin to cue his Taylor Swift playlist because they are never getting back together. She also gives a tip that if she sees them ever again in these lands, she's gonna kill them.
We are never,
ever getting back together. That's what Feyre said, so you can quote us on it. She literally said that. Chapter 48. We are now in a tiny inn in the middle of nowhere where Faysand, that's their nickname, share some deep conversation. Their first real kiss and an intimate encounter, though Feyre wanted more, but Rhys said that they needed more space before he actually takes her to bed. Chapter 49. The next morning, Rhysand is being a tad bit cold to Feyre. She wanted to just have fun with him, but he needs to tell her something. Before he can do that, he's being shot out of the sky with ash arrows, and Feyre sets out on a rescue mission to save him from Highburn soldiers.
Wild.
Chapter 50. Rhysand is not getting better, so Feyre sets out into the forest to find a cure for the poison in his system. She enlists an old friend to help her, but she finds out more than just the cure. She finds out she's Rhysand's mate.
Cue, Amanda was right.
Part 1.
Part 1.
Feyre confronts Rhysand even though he's struggling to be alive at the moment. Feyre doesn't want to listen to any of his excuses about why he didn't tell her about being mates. Cue Rhysand's sad playlist because Feyre is about to give him a run for his money. What do you think Rhysand's sad playlist is playing?
A Bruno Mars song. That's what I'm picturing.
Or like that Sam Smith song we were singing earlier. Chapter 51. Mor sneaks Feyre away to their vacation cabin to give her time to think about the events that unfolded the past couple of days and to deal with her feelings about finding out Rhysand being her mate. Chapter 52. Feyre is in her sad song contemplative era as well, just unsure to deal with her feelings for Rhysand and how her relationship with Tamlin was doomed from the start. But she does start to paint again, not just on canvases, she paints the entire cabin. Mor returns to make sure she's still alive and is seemingly impressed with what Feyre has done to their home, hopefully. Chapter 53. Short chapter about Feyre finally seeing a future for herself.
That covers it.
Chapter 54. The most epic epic chapter ever. The most masterful setup in all of literary fiction, in my opinion.
Yes.
To literally the end. Listen on to hear what happened.
Oh my God. Before you go to chapter 55, let's just give a little clap for Sarah for that one.
Fucking
Amazing.
masterful.
Amazing. Encore. Encore.
Cheers, Sarah J. Maas. That was fucking epic.
Cheers, Sarah J. Maas. Literary genius.
And our last chapter of this section was chapter 55. Feyre and Rhysand finally admitting their feelings to each other. They spend the rest of the night making up for lost time. As we close out this set of chapters, reality is finally coming back into play, and we still have a war to prepare for here, people.
I totally forgot about the war coming.
This isn't just a romance story.
Yeah, unfortunately.
There's war coming. We need to prepare for. We got Jurian hanging out there. We got the mortal queens being bitches. We've got the king of Highburn also being a bitch.
Yeah, motherfuckers. Unbelievable.
All right, but that's all I have for the summaries. I obviously have a lot more to say when we start talking about the plot. But before that, I'm going to hand this over to Amanda to catch us up on our characters.
Yes, thanks, Megan. I'm going to start the character section today with the leader of the Illyrian war camp, Lord Devlin. He hates them the least of all the warlords. He is one of the few who even lets women train without throwing a tantrum. He had given Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel a shot at the blood right other camp lords wouldn't have. And he didn't deny them their victory either. And I will go into details about what the blood right is in the world building section.
Yeah, so he's a dick, but he's not the biggest dick in the Illyrian war camps.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool that he was letting the females train, even though it kind of seemed like they weren't really getting a fair shot still. But progress is progress.
He's letting them because Cassian is like forcing it down their throat, and so is Rhysand. Exactly. But I think any excuse he can find to make them not go into training that day, he'll definitely make sure that they're doing that instead. But yeah, no, he's definitely milder than the other war camps.
Yeah. I thought it was just a nice little touch in there that Rhysand was also wanting female warriors. Just shows what a man he is.
Yes, definitely.
Speaking of Rhysand,
tell us about our man.
Yes. He is met with a lot of resistance when trying to get the females to train at the Illyrian war camps. Some camps issued decrees that if a female was caught training, she was to be deemed unmarriageable. Rhys tells Feyre that he befriended Tamlin long ago and taught him some Illyrian techniques. Tamlin's father was threatened by him in their friendship because he was weaker than both of them. He wanted to prove to the world that he wasn't. Tamlin's father, brothers, and Tamlin himself set out into the Illyrian wilderness, having heard from Tamlin, from Rhysand, where his mother and sister would be, and that he planned to see them. He wasn't there, and they slaughtered his mother and sister anyway.
Devastating news, because you just think from ACOTAR that there was just some big event, that it was all Rhysand's fault while why this feud is in place, when in fact, really, Tamlin's family started it.
Of course. The douchebags.
Also, I just realized that you're wearing darker colors like night court, and I'm wearing green like spring court, and I just immediately want to change because fuck Tamlin.
When Rhys and his father heard the news, they went to find Tamlin's father and brothers. They went to the spring court, and Rhysand slayed Tamlin's brothers on sight. He held their minds and rendered them helpless while he cut them into pieces and melted their brains inside their skulls. Yeah, that's what you get.
That's what you get for murdering his mom and sister, fuckers.
Yeah. Rhysand's father killed Tamlin's father and had killed Tamlin's mother. His father had promised not to touch her and that they weren't the kind of males who would do that. But he lied to him, and he did it anyway. Then he went for Tamlin's room. Rhysand tried to stop his father, but Tamlin opened the door and didn't even get to say a word before Tamlin killed him with one blow.
Yeah, I think that was definitely an epic mistake on Rhysand's father's part. Obviously, then Rhysand becomes the High Lord of the Night Court in this scene. But if you knew Tamlin was powerful already, I think that you go and kill Tamlin first before he gets his father's powers of High Lord, making him even more powerful than he already was. I think Tamlin probably could have killed Rhysand's father anyways.
Right.
But Yeah, I think that was an epic mistake of taking him on after you already killed the dad.
Yeah,
But
but I also think it was a mistake to kill the mom. He kind of got what he deserved at that point. You weren't supposed to kill the female, you douche.
he went back on his word. Not that
Yeah,
Reason's dad seemed like all that great of a guy,
yeah.
but
Could
yeah,
have
it's
shown
wild.
different colors in this scene, though, and he didn't.
Well, I think he was just seeing fury for his
Of
daughter being
course.
killed and his wife,
Yeah,
even though it doesn't seem like him and his wife were all that lovey-dovey, but they were
yeah.
still mates.
Right.
They were mated.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tamlin and Rhysand becoming High Lords at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Wild. When Feyre learns about the mating bond, she tells Rhysand to tell her everything. So, this is what we find out. I'm also going to mention here that there is a lot of magic, but since I'm going to go into detail, I'm not going to repeat it at the end of the world building section.
Okay. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Cassian and Azriel were stationed in other legions, so they had no idea that Rhysand and his forces had been taken prisoner, and that Amarantha's captains held them for weeks, torturing and slaughtering his warriors. They put ash bolts through his wings and had the same chains from being captured. Those chains are one of Hybern's greatest assets, stone delved from deep in their land, capable of nullifying a high phase power, even Rhysand's. They chained him up between two trees and beat him, trying to get him to tell them where the Night Court forces were, using his warriors, their deaths, and pain to break him. Only he didn't break. He had a plan to kill Amarantha, but the day before, she and Jurian had faced each other on the battlefield. His screaming was endless. Amarantha was so focused on torturing him that she didn't detect Rhysand's father's arrival. He rescued Rhysand and told Azriel to leave the ash spikes in his wings as punishment for getting caught. He was so injured that the healers informed him if he tried to fight before his wings healed, he would never fly again. They all, Rhysand, Cassian, and Azriel, had changed and were all so different after the war. This is why
Yeah.
I'm like, he got what he deserved, Rhysand's father, because he's still such a fucking douchebag.
Yeah, of course, Rhysand didn't get caught on purpose, but
Yeah.
his punishment for being caught was making the ash arrows stay in his wings.
Yeah.
That's so stupid.
So stupid, but not only that, but it's weakening him. If he can't fly forever, you just weakened your own court. What are you, dumb?
I wonder if Rhysand's father is not that pleased that his son, who will take over for him, is half Illyrian and has these wings. I wonder if he thinks that it will be, I don't know, more detrimental to him to have both powers and that people will continue to come after him. So if you take away his wings, then he just has his kind of fae magical powers, and maybe deep down, if we play devil's advocate for the dad, that he was protecting Rhysand in some way. I mean, I really don't think that he was doing
Yeah,
that,
I'm
but
cringing when you say that. I'm like, there's no fucking way. He's just a little
I
coward piece
know.
of shit who thought his son was going to be stronger than him and was weak in the mind and wanted to get rid of his strength so he could be the top dog.
No, I know. I don't know why that even popped into my head.
No,
Let's
I
just
mean,
cut
it's
that
nice to
out.
play devil's advocate for sure. And I think we should because I'm sure there's people that listen that may think that way. And it's important to acknowledge both sides, but in my opinion, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Rhysand attended a party to celebrate their trade agreement with Hybern under the mountain to slip into Amarantha's mind and make her reveal every lying crime she committed and then turn her brain to liquid before anyone could react. Instead, he didn't bother to sniff his drink, and he felt his powers being ripped away by the spell she put on it at the toast. He flung his powers out one last time, wiping Valeris, the wards, all that was good from the minds of the Court of Nightmares, the only ones he had allowed to come with him. He threw the shield around Valeris, binding it to his friends, so that they had to remain or risk that protection collapsing, and used the last dreads to tell them, mind to mind, what was happening and to stay away. Within a few seconds, his power belonged wholly to Amarantha. What a shitty way to lose your powers.
No, definitely. It's wild. I mean, I get why he didn't bring Cassie and Azriel.
Yeah.
I mean, she definitely would have slaughtered them like on site.
Of course,
But at the
yeah.
same time, if they had been there, it maybe could have prevented him from taking a sip of that drink. Then obviously none of this would have happened, right? We wouldn't be where we are today with Feyre being Fae and now in Prythian.
Yeah. Rhysand was having dreams of Feyre in her cottage and decided to push a thought back. of the night sky, of the image that brought him joy when he needed it most. Open night sky, stars, and the moon. Rhysand broke into Claire's head when they brought her under the mountain. He took away her pain and told her to scream when expected to, so they didn't suspect anything. After a week, he couldn't let them do it anymore. So while they tortured her, he slipped into her mind and ended it. She didn't feel any pain. She felt none of what they did to her, even at the end. Oh, I literally shed a tear during this part because I really did feel so bad for Claire. And now I'm just like, at least I know it still sucks that she had to die. And the whole lie about telling Rhysand anyway that it was her name just made me feel so bad and guilty for Feyre and for Claire. And now this just like lessens the hit just a little bit. Rhysand tells Feyre that when she died under the mountain, in his desperation, he clung to the bond, not the bargain. But he grabbed the bond between them and tugged and willed her to hold on, to stay with him, because if they could get free, then all 7 of them were there. All of the High Lords, that is. They could bring Feyre back, and he didn't care if he had to slice into all their minds to do it. He'd make them save her. She freed them with her last breath, and he wrapped his power around the bond, the mating bond. He could feel her flickering there, holding on. So Amarantha died, and he spoke to the High Lords mind to mind, convincing them to come forward and to offer that spark of power. He thinks that transforming her into Fae made the bond lock in place permanently. He knew it existed, but it hit him there, hit him so strong that he panicked. And we know what happens from there.
Lots of things happen.
Lots and lots of things, yes.
So obviously we'll go into more detail about the story in chapter 54, but this is a good overview of what happened to Rhysand during these chapters.
Yeah, and I think it is kind of character development here because we're already falling for Rhysand, but to know these little details about all of ACOTAR, basically, the entire book is written for this chapter, like you were saying the other day to me. So that's why I mentioned it here with his character building, because I feel like a lot of this stuff just makes us fall for him all over again in what we're saying.
Definitely tears.
Yes. 4 Spring Court sentinels show up in the middle of the Illyrian woods, and Feyre knows 2 of them, Bronn and Hart. And also with them was Lucien. He is not Lucy Baby anymore.
I was not happy to see Lucy Baby in this moment. We are broken up for the time being.
I fucking hate him now. But anyways, he tells Feyre that they had been hunting her for 2 months. He'd come to take her home to Tamlin, but Feyre obviously refused. Lucien was confused and tried to convince Feyre to go home with them. More about that later, though, in the plot section.
Yes, that was an epic scene between them.
Yes, and so unexpected. My jaw dropped. I screamed. I was like, what the fuck? Like, why?
Every chapter during this section of chapters, like everyone, I'm like, okay, we have to read the next one because it's oh my god. And we have to go to the next one because it's another oh my god. And we have to keep going. And she's like, Megan, we need to read and then we need to do our notes. Yes. And we're not moving on until we do our notes. I'm like, but it's not right. We just have to keep going. It's so epic.
She just really wanted to get to chapter 54.
Yes, because it's the most mind-blowing scene I've ever read in a book.
It really is. I totally agree.
And getting to this chapter too, I wanted to see your reaction when Lucien pops up.
I know. That was wild. I was not expecting that at all, but I'll save that discussion for later. Let's move on to Feyre. Feyre tells off Lucien, and she shapeshifts and grows a pair of wings. I knew she was getting wings.
Amanda's right, part 2.
I love being right.
Actually, if we thought about all the things you're right about, just like in both this book and the last book, I don't think we're at part 1 or part 2. It's like part 25 and part 67.
Oh, that makes me feel great.
Oh, you've done so good. I have to hide my surprise from you all the time.
I know, but you're getting so much better at hiding it.
Perfect. Thank you.
At first, it was a little obvious. Just a little bit.
I can't hide my disdain for Tamlin. I really
Well, now that I know all of the story, I understand why it's so hard to keep it like a straight face.
It was honestly the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. I'm just kidding. But it was difficult to keep it in line with the story of where we were, having known everything that I know. And that you obviously didn't know,
Right.
and to not try to sway you in any way. But at one point in time, once Rhysand was fully in the story, I just like couldn't help my love for him, and
Yeah.
it just shone so brightly.
Yes. It still shines so brightly. Every time you say Rhysand, you have a giant smile on your face.
He's my favorite book boyfriend.
Yes, he is great. Rhysand and Feyre also kiss, and it is spicy and delicious, and they do much, much more, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, but they have their first real kiss.
Yes, tongue and all.
Yeah, except not him licking her face like a weirdie.
Yeah. We also find out
Oh.
all of Feyre's powers from the High Lords at this point in the story. So we know she has
Mhm.
claws, talons,
Well,
wings now. She can fly. She's
she
got,
hasn't flown yet, but
yeah.
she does have
Okay, you're right.
wings.
She hasn't flown yet, but she's got the wings. She's got what else? The darkness.
Yeah, so maybe we should go from like each High
Yeah,
Lord.
okay.
So from Tamlin, she has the shapeshifting, which
Mhm.
is the claws, the talons, the how she's able to grow wings. Then from or maybe I don't know if the wings are part Illyrian because of Rhysand, but
Yeah.
anyways, just thinking of that. Then from Rhysand, she has the darkness that she
Mhm.
can bring. She can speak mind to mind or go into people's minds from Rhysand. From the autumn court from Baron, she has fire.
Yep.
From the winter court, she can make ice.
Mhm.
From the day court, she can summon wind.
Mhm.
And she shines brightly. She has that glow from
Dawn.
the dawn. She can heal, right? Was that from his healing powers?
Yes. Yep. She has
Um,
healing powers.
and then summer is water, and she can summon water, and she splashes people in the face, and she makes those water animals.
Mhm.
And I think that's
Yeah,
it.
I think that's all of them. Still pretty
I think
cool
so.
though. She's got lots of powers, our future High Lady, because I'm so convinced that that's gonna be part of our storyline. We finally get confirmation that Rhysand and Feyre are mates, but she's pissed that he didn't tell her when he suspected it, which was way back, months ago, under the mountain. I
Yeah.
guess I can
I mean,
see it.
I think she had every right to be upset
Yeah.
from not being told something. I think it's just a touchy subject for her to be kept out of the loop
Yeah.
because of Tamlin.
Yeah.
And she said a couple chapters back, she's like, do not keep secrets from me. Keep me in the loop. If you do that again, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to work for you anymore. And he's like, okay. And then this was probably the biggest thing he could have ever kept from her. It's her life. Like, that's her
Yeah.
mate.
I
Like,
totally
I
get
don't know.
it. I just
I get
think
also
too.
why he didn't tell her,
Yeah,
but
that's exactly what I was gonna say. The way she reacted to every flirty thing he said was negative. Not even trying to be like, Rhysand was right in doing that, because I totally think he should have told her. But also, when was he gonna tell her if she was being a jerk the whole time or not really picking up on his love?
well,
I
I
don't
think
know.
he was just being flirty and bantering with her. He was never sitting her down and being like, Feyre, I have these strong feelings for you. Like,
Yeah.
I've come to respect you and to obviously we know he respects her, but I've come to really enjoy our relationship. They never had like a serious
Yeah.
discussion with each other. It was always just like this flirty, like nonsense between us.
Yeah.
And I guess if he had done that, maybe she would have taken a little bit more seriously,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I guess hindsight is 2020 and who knows if it played out the right way, but I think for this story, I think he did what he thought was best
Yeah,
and
I
he's
agree.
always going to do that.
Yeah, totally agree. One last major detail about Feyre in this section is that she paints again. She painted nearly every surface in the main room of the House of Mist with
Mhm.
decorations and little images. And in between the intricate decorations, she had painted all of them bits and pieces of Mor, Asriel, Cassian, and Amryn, including their eyes, and a set of Illyrian wings. We find out later,
Mm.
though, why she did not paint Rhysand's eyes, and I'll let Megan tell us all about that in her favorite chapter later.
Okay.
On to Cassian and Asriel. Feyre is comparing Cassian and Asriel to Lucian. She knew deep in her bones that Cassian might push her and test her limits, but the moment she said no, he would back off. And she knew that if she had been wasting away and Rhys had done nothing to stop it, Cassian and Asriel would have pulled her out. They would have taken her somewhere, wherever she needed to be, and dealt with Rhys later. which I totally agree,
Yeah,
100%.
for sure. They would have no qualms saying to Rhysand, "You're being a fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
You're treating her like shit. She's fucking dying, and you need to do something about it. And if you're not going to, then we'll do it for you,
Yeah.
and we'll deal with you later." And Lucian just doesn't have the balls that
Yeah.
Cassian and Azriel do.
Well, I get that he's scared of Tamlin, but why do you want to be friends or follow someone who you're that scared to defend somebody with, too? You
Mhm.
know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I really loved Lucian. That's why I'm so fucking pissed at him and I hate him. And I hope he gets a redemption arc in my brain, but I don't see it happening at this point. He's literally hearing Feyre say how miserable she was in the spring court, and you
Mhm.
still are trying to get her to go with you? Who are you
Mhm.
thinking about? Just you in this situation, and Tamlin, not her.
I think because let's look where Lucian came from, the Autumn Court. I think his dad is way worse than Tamlin is.
Mhm.
So I think that Tamlin has done a lot for Lucian. He basically saved his life, letting him come into the Spring Court, helped him get a new eye when Amarantha ripped it out. Like, Tamlin has done really good things for Lucian,
Mhm.
and I think where he comes from is so bad. And of course, he thinks Rhysand's this terrible person because everyone thinks that he's the worst.
Yeah.
So Lucian is probably just scared for Feyre that she's being brainwashed or held against her own will. And he wants to bring her back to his friend who took him in when he was in a bad court. So
Yeah.
I still give him a little leeway because I just think of everything that he's been through. And then I do, just at the end of the day, still love Lucian. I think he does have Feyre's best interest deep down.
Yeah, no, you're more
But
forgiving than me. I'm like, fuck that motherfucker. I'm done with him. Over it. Because Feyre went through a lot too. And Tamlin did a lot for Feyre too and her family. And that's why she was challenged leaving and felt guilty about it for a while. But she still had the courage to do what was right. And I think Lucian should
yeah,
have too. But
yeah, no, I agree. But
yeah,
I think, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, they're two very, very different people
right.
and how they handle situations.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
um,
They all have
it
their
took a
own
lot for
trauma.
It took a lot for Feyre to walk away, though. It
Yeah.
was a big dramatic event because if that didn't happen, she probably would still be there if he hadn't locked her in the house. So I think it would have to be something just as horrible
Yeah.
for Lucian for him to leave Tamlin's side,
Yeah.
or something major happening for him to leave
Yeah.
Tamlin's side.
I think too, I'm just so obsessed with our inner circle people. And I love that she even recognizes that they would take care of her no matter what. So that even makes
Yeah.
me more cringy about Lucian. That if these people and everybody knows the real Rhysand here, we know he's not
Mhm.
this evil Court of Nightmares guy. So I'll give Lucian that. But they still know he's super powerful and probably could kill them all still. And they would still do what's best for Feyre in this situation. So it's
Yeah.
tricky, but I get it.
I think that obviously the story's not over,
True.
and I think that I don't hate Lucian, I guess I will say.
Okay.
So I think in this part of the story, of course, I'm upset with him, but I think overall, I don't hate him the
I
way
hope he
I
gets a
dislike
redemption
Tamlin.
because he was my favorite character last book. So, but enough
Yeah. Do you
about
think
that redhead for now.
Yeah, enough about the Spring Court for now.
Yes.
We'll have way more to say about them, I'm sure,
Yes.
very soon.
I'm sure. Back to Cassian and Azriel. Feyre actually asks more if she ever slept with Azriel. She tells her no. After that time with Cassian, she swore off any of Rhysand's friends. Azriel's got no shortage of lovers, though. He's better at keeping them secret than they are, but he's got them.
I am one of Asriel's
I was
secret lovers. I'm
literally,
just
you
kidding.
read my brain. I was gonna say, Megan, are you gonna tell us that you're one of Azriel's lovers?
No, I think Brittany would kill me if I ever tried to steal Asriel
Oh,
away from her.
shit.
But
Yeah, he's Brittany's
um,
man.
yeah, shoot, I need more information about Asriel. I need a steamy scene with him in it ASAP because I need to know what he's got going on.
Yeah. Moore is the ultimate girl
Yes.
bestie right now
Yes.
because she stays overnight with Feyre at the House of Mist to keep her company and even hides the fact that she's there from Rhysand. She's being such a good girlfriend, way better than Ianthe ever was to her. She even goes as far as to paint stick figures on the wall, which is amazing. Like, that's would make me laugh for days if I was a painter and my friends just doing it to make me smile. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love, love, love Moore and their friendship.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to Cassian and Azriel sticking up for Feyre if she needed it. Moore is doing that exact same thing. Feyre went
Exactly.
up to her and said, I need you to get me away. I need you to do this for me. And Moore does look at Rhysand, and then she's like, fuck it. Feyre is my friend, and I'm going to protect her and what she needs right now,
Yeah.
and takes her to the House of Mist. So, yeah, she's the ultimate BFF at this time.
Hell
and
yeah.
basically her sister-in-law, even though Rhysand and Moore aren't brother and sister, but they kind of
Yeah,
are.
they're cousins, but they're family. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the section 2, we hear from the Mortal Queens again. They send word that they would return in 3 days to Feyre's family estate. Cannot wait to hear what happens with them in the next section. But let's go over some world building. First, we're going to start at the Illyrian war camp where we are at the beginning of this section. It was built near the top of a forested mountain. The Illyrian camp was all bare rock and mud, interrupted by only crude, easy to pack tents centered around large fire pits. A dozen permanent buildings were erected of gray mountain stone. Near the mountain's edge were the sparring and training rings. The women train here in this camp, but they do chores first, although Rhys explains that they were told to let them train before. The house the gang stayed in while visiting the war camp was simple, bigger, and in better condition than the old cottage. The house had a kitchen, living area, and dining room with a cramped bathroom, a storage room, and a back door because no true Illyrian ever made a home with only one exit. Smart.
Smart.
The inn in the Illyrian mountains where Feyre and Rhysand would spend the night was a tavern with a few rooms to rent, all geared towards the hunters, warriors, and travelers passing through this part of the forest, either on their way to the Illyrian lands or out of them, or just for the fairies who dwelt there, solitary and glad to be that way. They had gotten the room in the attic. The room was extremely small. The ceiling was so slanted that to get on the other side of the bed, Feyre had to crawl across the mattress. The room was so cramped, it was nearly impossible to walk around the bed to the tiny armoire shoved against the other wall.
That just reminds me of my guest bedroom with that huge slanted ceiling. I was like, is this what their room looked like? Maybe, I don't know. It sounds like my guest bedroom might be a little bit bigger than that, but that's just what I kept
Yeah,
picturing
you can stand
reading
up
that
in there.
scene. Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. I feel like he almost got that room on purpose, even though he says it was the last room. They had to be so cramped together and touching and...
Yeah, he's like, hey, I tried.
Yeah. Not my fault.
His fingers
Not my
are really
fault.
crossed. Yeah.
We learn about the blood rite as well. You go unarmed into the mountains, magic band, no siphons, wings bound, with no supplies or clothes beyond what you have on you. You and every other Illyrian male who wants to move from novice to true warrior. A few hundred head into the mountains to start the week, but not all come out at the end. Most try to kill each other for food and clothes, for vengeance, for glory between feuding clans. And we find out too that Azriel, Cassian, and Rhysand actually win the blood rite when they participated in it. Feyre notices that Rhysand had a great deal of magic constantly in use at once. He says it helps work off the strain of his power. The magic needs release, draining, or else it will build up and literally drive him insane. That's why they call the Illyrian stones siphons. They help them channel the power and empty it when necessary. So he's just itching to get this power out.
Yeah, I mean, but he doesn't even get to use the siphons because he explodes them.
Yeah. Feyre traps the cereal for the tea again.
The cereal loves to spill the tea.
Yes. She is the master at catching cereals. She's done it twice now on the first try.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you she does it again.
Oh, I bet. I don't think it's the last time we see the cereal. That's for damn sure. She asks the cereal what poison was used on those arrows and where could she find the cure. He tells her that her blood was actually the cure. It was rich with the healing gift from the High Lord of the Dawn Court, and it shall spare him from the Bloodbane's wrath.
Yep, that's not all he said.
That's not all he said. That's right. The cereal also lets her in on a little secret. Rhysand and her are mates.
Whoa. I'm so surprised. I never thought in a million years just kidding, that was going to happen.
I should have known. I'm always right. No, I'm just kidding. No, but when I read about his parents, I just knew. I just knew it was coming. I knew it.
Yeah, I don't think I was all that surprised either when I found out that they were actually mates when I read it the first time
Yeah.
around. I didn't think the cereal was going to be the one to tell
No,
her
yeah, me neither.
that they were mates. So I think that was shocking to me when I read it the first time.
Yeah.
But them actually being mates, I was like, oh no, for sure. Especially when she was like, oh, the mating bond hasn't clicked with me and Tamlin. Back at the beginning of this book, I was like, yeah, of course it didn't, because that's not your mate, bitch.
Yep, I knew that was never going to click in place.
Yeah.
So Rhysand explains to Feyre that it is an important moment when a female offers her mate food. It goes back to whatever beasts they were a long, long time ago. But it still matters. The first time matters. Some mated pairs will even have an occasion of it and throw a party just so the female can formally offer her mate food. That's usually done amongst the wealthy, but it means that the female accepts the mating bond and she gives him the soup.
She heats him up some soup.
I love that.
You know.
But
she's
before
like,
we get
"Yeah."
there, let's talk a little bit about the House of Mist.
Okay.
When Feyre learns that Rhysand is her mate and he knew about it for a while without telling her, she decides to hide out in another property owned by Rhysand and Mor's family.
She's a runner.
Yeah. They got sent up there for reflection when they were younger. Mor said Rhysand used to smuggle her in books and booze. The house was also magical. There was no need for firewood because it was going to burn until she left. Mor agreed also not to tell Rhysand where she was. The house was spelled to take care of her. She could wish or speak for things and it'll be done. I want a fucking house like that.
I want a magical house.
Yeah. Clean.
Yeah.
Make dinner.
Yeah. More firewood.
Fill my bookshelf.
Give me dessert.
Yeah, I need this in my life.
More wine.
And finally, which actually might not be your favorite part of this episode since we're going to cover chapter 54 today, but...
That's true. But I still have to say, it's time for magic. Woohoo. I got the magic in me.
It's time for the magic section. So I'm just going to go over the bullets one by one and list all of the magic that I caught in this section. Here we go. She made butterflies of water, flap and dance. Then the animals froze in midair and smashed to the ground. Then the clearing exploded into flame. Embers flared around them, floating in the air. Feyre sent out a breath of soothing dark, a breath of ice and water, as if it were a wind at dawn, sweeping clean the world. She was able to weave her powers together into something new. That was fucking epic.
Yeah, she's definitely a badass.
Yes, for sure. Rhysand wasn't using his powers since they were tracking him through his magic, but he had used his power earlier in the day, small enough that it might not be noticed, but they wouldn't return to that part of the forest anytime soon. Unfortunately, though, he was detected.
Tracked.
Yes.
Yes.
Feyre asked Rhysand how he gets a t-shirt over his wings. He says the back is made of slats that close with hidden buttons, but in normal circumstances, when he can use his magic, he uses it to seal them shut.
No, I love that part because you were like, wait, how does he close his shirt? And then Feyre's like, hey, how do you close the back of your shirt?
Literally thought exactly what I was thinking.
It's so funny.
Me and Feyre were like very connected at that moment in time. Feyre was thinking that everyone around Rhysand had some use, some mighty skill, and yet there she was. Nothing more than a strange hybrid, more trouble than she was worth. Rhysand said, "No, you're not." She said, "Don't read my thoughts." So he's reading her mind.
Get out of my head.
Feyre is playing with her power, summoning wings, winnowing, fire and ice and water, and now wind. Just a little bit more practicing.
She's getting stronger.
Feyre was winnowing to collect all of the ash hours that their enemies left behind after hitting Rhysand with several ash arrows. She also winnows her and Rhysand to a cave, which was pretty epic.
Yeah, obviously it took her a bit, but she did it.
I think too in the emotional state is probably where she like is the most magical and was able to do that because of that as well. But yeah, she's definitely getting stronger and better at using her powers. She's even combining them all. Like, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Rhysand was attacked by Hybern soldiers with ancient chains to nullify his power. They must have traced the magic he used. That was why he hadn't been able to use the bond to speak mind to mind.
Mm-hmm.
The house that Feyre spent time in alone was spelled to take care of her. She could wish or speak things, and it'll be done, as I said earlier. Candles
Mm-hmm.
sputtered to life thanks to the magic that kept the House of Mist hospitable. Shelves free of dust, which Feyre thought was from the magic as well. After Feyre accepts the bond, she and Rhysand make love. After she's actually
Mm.
accepted it, after hiding
Yeah.
out in the magical house. The Court of Mist. I mean, the House of Mist.
The Court of Mist.
And while they were making love, the bond glowed bright and strong between them. Such a cute moment.
Mm-hmm.
Rhysand admits to Feyre that he thought she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen from the moment he saw her on Calanmai. He also admits that he read Feyre's mind that night and knew that she thought he was the most beautiful male she'd ever seen, which made them even.
So perfect
I loved
that
that part.
he knew that. The restraint that he must have showed in that moment to not react to
I
her
know.
thinking that he was the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. You know, because like his ego was like poof in
Yeah.
that moment. Like she couldn't even say he was a hell of a high lord without him being like a hell of a high lord. He's been waiting for months, almost a year, to say this to her.
I
Like, I
know.
knew you thought I was the most beautiful man you'd ever seen.
I loved that. That was like one of my favorites of him explaining to her how he knew, and when she asked him to tell him everything. Like, I was so happy in that moment.
Yeah.
It was so
No,
cute.
it's
But let's move on now to our plot notable lines and some foreshadowing section.
yeah, let's do that. Well, let's cheers
Oh.
to our plot section.
Cheers.
Cheers. Let's bring it back to chapter 45.
Yes.
They are now in the Illyrian war camps the day following Starfall. She recaps what happened the rest of the night to us as we are first entering the Illyrian war camp. She tells us how she danced with all of her friends and Rhys, and that when most everyone had gone home and Moore was even asleep on the couch, she continued to dance with Rhys until the sun came up.
So cute.
They flew home as the sun was rising and went to bed, though she did wait a full 30 minutes to see if he would come to her door, but he did not.
I would have done the same thing, Feyre.
I would have waited too. I'm like, is he gonna come? We danced together all night.
I would have went
He
and knocked
texted
on his
me.
door and then ran back.
That would have been epic. But the next day, they were kind of quiet around each other. I think they're just still feeling each other out.
Yeah.
But Moore winnowed them into the camp, and we get to see what the camp looked like and meet the lord of the camp. Moore is not happy to be there. She hates this place. She hates being in the Illyrian war camps.
I don't blame her.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there either.
No.
It's cold, and people are rude, and they treat people terribly.
Yeah, and she has trauma from them.
Yeah, exactly. The Lord is surprised to see the gang here at his camp. He said that Cassian, he calls him a dog, had just been there to inspect the camp and to see that the girls are training. The Lord advises that they have to complete their chores first before they can train, because Rhysand and Cassian, I mean, all of them kind of see that the girls are not in the training ring with everyone else.
Yeah.
Rhysand reminds the Lord that the girls are supposed to train before they do chores. And he was reminded of that when Cassian was last here. And then he also tells the Lord that they will be staying in his mother's old house for the foreseeable future. The Lord does say that some of his top warriors are already staying in this house. He's like, I really don't give a shit. Have them get out and clean it first.
Yeah.
The Lord takes in Feyre and realizes that she has been made just like Amren was. So I think that's really interesting that he can clock that right away, that she is not just a typical high fae, that she was made and can spot the difference.
Yeah, I know. That is interesting.
I wonder if everyone can spot the difference, but I think it's just interesting because he's been the only one to really outright point out that she was made.
Yeah.
And he thought that Amren had been the only one of her kind. So that's kind of how he phrases it. But Amren and Feyre are very, very different. Amren is old world.
For real. Ancient.
Yes. Rhys tells the Lord that Feyre is his, and if he touches her, then he will lose his hand and then his head. And then when Feyre is done killing him, Rhysand will then take his bones and break it into tiny pieces. I think he said he would turn his bones into dust. But I think it's so funny that he's like, yeah, you'll lose your hand and your head, and that's what Feyre will do to you. And then after she does that to you, then I will turn you into nothing.
Yeah.
Just setting her up as a threat, like, don't fuck with her.
And basically demasculating him, saying that if you do anything wrong, Pharaoh will fucking kill you. You will
Yeah,
die at the hands of a woman who you won't even be courteous enough to train.
yeah, he's like, you don't have to worry about me. You need to worry about this one right
Yeah.
here. Rhys informs Mor and Cassian that him and Feyre are going to go off and train and not to make too much of a mess while he's gone, because then they will have nowhere else to stay. Because this lord, like we said earlier, is more mild than the other Illyrian war camps and warlords. So a lot of them probably wouldn't let him stay in their camps like Lord Devlin is. He updates Feyre when they're on their way to training that they haven't heard back from the Mortal Queens yet, and she just keeps hearing in her head, traitor, 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 and remembers Rhys saying, she's mine. Well, he didn't whisper it, but I can't do the growly, she's mine.
Mine. Is that good?
Ooh, that was a good one.
Thanks. I
Yeah.
have a deeper, raspier voice than you. That's probably why.
Yeah, I've been trying all episode to do it, and I should have just asked you to do it for me. Feyre asks about him having the female Illyrians train and become warriors. And this is where he explains it's been an uphill battle that he's been trying to fight, that he did stop the warlords from clipping their wings, but while he was gone under the mountain, even the milder camps started doing it again. So he had to put a stop to that again when he came back. He then talks about the blood right with Feyre and that how Lord Devlin had allowed them to participate. And he tells Feyre that they've come out so far to train so that no one can see what they're going to be doing. He doesn't want the Lord or anybody else in those Illyrian camps to be able to see the power that Feyre can wield. This is when she questions why he's not using magic, but she can. And he says that someone has been tracking his power when he uses it, but she's invisible to whoever's tracking them. So they don't have a lock-in on Feyre, but somehow they have a lock-in on Rhysand's, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But Feyre doesn't want to train. She wants to know more about his involvement in Tamlin's family's death, especially now that she's having more feelings towards Rhysand. She kind of needs to get this cleared up in her head, I think, before she can fully accept that she loves Rhysand or she really just wants something serious with him.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, I'll tell you the story, but you have to use your magic while I'm doing that. So the more you use your magic, the more of the story that I'll tell you. And she's like, okay, I'll agree to this training method. And then this is when we find out the real backstory of Tamlin and Rhysand, which Amanda already told us about earlier. So Amanda already broke down to us exactly what happened between Tamlin and Rhysand, how Rhysand's family got killed, how Tamlin's family got killed, and how Tamlin and Rhysand became High Lords at the exact same time. But what happened was when they both became High Lords at the exact same time, Rhysand just ran. He turned around and he fled. He was not about to go through an epic showdown, especially after all this tragedy had already happened the past couple of days.
Yeah.
Feyre apologizes for not knowing what happened to his family. Rhysand is surprised, though, that she didn't know all of this and that she didn't see his mother and sister's wings hanging up in a study or something like that, which is just so sad. They killed them and then they fucking took their wings.
Yeah.
Through all of this story time, Feyre has been practiced making her water animals. She turns them into ice, but when she hears the rest of the story between Tamlin and Rhysand, she made the clearing explode with flame. And Amanda kind of talked about this earlier during the magic section and how she got rid of those flames as well, which is just so epic about how she's wielding all of her powers.
Yeah.
She now knew why Rhysand made Tamlin beg on his knees, why he enjoyed taking her from her wedding day, and how he had saved her from her wedding day.
Yeah. Okay. This is my notable line for chapter 45, page 451, when Feyre is experimenting with her powers and realizes that she can combine them all into one power. She is thinking to herself, the power did not belong to the High Lords, not any longer. It belongs to me, as I belong only to me, as my future was mine to decide, to forge. Once I discovered and mastered what the others had given me, I could weave them together into something new, something of every court, and none of them.
So sick. Yeah.
So sick.
Yeah. So why she's thinking about everything that Tamlin has done and why Rhysand did what he did. She's now having this epic realization that she is power. She is so powerful. And it's just so fantastic.
She realizes too that she is more powerful than them all. That's how I kind of took it. She was saying none of them are this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It takes her a little bit to get there, but she
it
gets
does.
there in the end
Yeah,
that she is epic.
that's what's most important. She gets there in
Yes.
the
That's true.
end.
Feyre wants to know why Rhysand didn't tell her any of this sooner. And he's like, well, I didn't want you to think that I was trying to turn you against Tamlin, which is just, he is just such a good
I
man.
know.
After all these atrocities that Tamlin's family and Tamlin himself has done to him, and when you really think about it, not that she knows this in this moment, but that's his mate, and he let her stay there with
I
him. And
know. It's always Feyre's choice, and that is what I love about Rhysand. No matter
yes.
what, he does not selfishly make choices for her ever.
Yeah, and when she asks a question, he tells her
Yeah.
because that's why he didn't tell her sooner. He's like, "Well, I wasn't gonna turn him against you, and basically you didn't ask."
Yeah.
Then she says she could see him as a painting then, and that she wanted to paint, and she tells him that, and he's like, "Okay, well, if you're gonna do that, nude is best."
Yes. I would love to see that painting as soon as it's done.
1,000% Vera, please.
Megan's gonna
Someone
have like a
create
50 by
this.
50 in her
Yeah,
house.
hanging it up in my wall. The best piece of artwork I'd own if I ever got my hands on that.
Yes.
Chapter 46. She is so cold. She is in Feyre. I'm sure Mor is too, at the Illyrian war camp. And she says that she's even colder than she had ever been in the mortal realm. Even sitting by the fire after using so much power, she's just not warming up. They are having stew for dinner that was made by Cassian, which is just, I don't know, I kind of love that Cassian made their dinner, that he made the stew for
I
them.
know.
I don't know, I just love that.
The man can cook.
Cassian, the man can cook, and or at least he can make some stew while in the war camp,
Yep.
and they all pitch in like their little family. They take turns in doing things for each other.
Mhm.
Cassian advises to everyone that he had gotten one of the females in the camp to tell him that they had not trained in 10 days because of all the chores that they had to do. And that's not really the plan that Cassian and Rhysand have set forward in these camps.
No.
And they're not really happy to hear that. And Rhysand wants to know if there's any warriors in that group. And Mor says that, yeah, there is about 3 of them that have potential to become Illyrian warriors. But they at least want these girls to have some self-defense,
Yeah.
training so that
Yeah.
they can defend themselves.
Yeah.
But there are 3 that have potential to become actual warriors and to fight with them. Cassian is concerned about Mor going back to the Court of Nightmares the following day. Feyre thinks that it doesn't really seem like Mor wants to respond to him. And Feyre and Rhys decide at that moment they're gonna leave them alone and head to bed, leaving them to talk quietly. Which it's just so interesting that they have this kind of weird tension dynamic still between them,
I know.
even though it's just very clear that Mor wants no sort of relationship with Cassian or Azriel,
I
but
know.
Cassian is still very, very protective over Mor.
I feel like he almost feels guilty in a way because he participated in the act that made her family shun her and she almost died being nailed with a note and thrown in the woods. So I
Mhm.
feel like it's almost like a guilt that he has.
Yeah, because it's been like 500 years or something since that happened, and he's still being this protective over her.
Clearly,
And
there's no therapists in Prithian.
yeah, they all need some relationship counseling.
Yes.
When they reach the top of the stairs, Feyre and Rhysand, he tells her that she can share with Mor tonight. And Feyre is thinking to herself how it'd be so easy to walk the 3 steps between them across the hall and just throw herself at him, basically.
Yeah.
But she doesn't.
She doesn't. She has good self control, more than I would have.
Same.
But here's my notable line for chapter 46, page 454. I didn't want to think what it meant, what I was doing, what this was, whatever it was, between us, because things between us had never been normal, not from the very first moment we met on Callan May. I've been unable to easily walk away from him then, when I thought he was deadly, dangerous. But now, she thought, traitor, traitor, traitor. He opened his mouth, but I had already slipped inside my room and shut the door.
Another angsty moment.
The tension is just building.
Building. And
Building.
we're almost there to the explosion of that said tension.
Yes.
The next day, they are out back training, and since there had been no word yet from the mortal queens, and Reese took them out a little further into the forest this time because he didn't want anyone at the camp to see her powers, because yesterday she literally almost set an entire forest on fire.
Yeah.
So he's like, we need to go a little bit further today.
Yeah.
As they're walking to the spot, she tells him to stay back as she continues further and further away from him. And he mocks a dramatic bow to her, and she flicks him off, basically. But as she's walking away, she could feel his eyes on her, devouring her. She could feel through their bond the hunger that he felt towards her. And she lowered her shields a bit that she could feel on his full-on delight. And it's just, I just love them so much. Amanda, I don't even know what else to say in this section, but our girl's getting turned on. I was getting a little turned on.
Same.
And she even said that what she was feeling through their bond was going right down to her lower bits.
Her lady parts were screaming.
Yes, except someone's about to dash a cold bucket of icy water on her because she hears her name all of a sudden, and she hadn't sensed them due to being downwind. And when she whips around, that's when she sees the 4 spring court sentinels and Lucian behind her as she has her arrow pointed straight at them. Which brings us to our next chapter, chapter 47. Feyre was trapped between them and the stream. They have her cornered. Lucian tells her that they've been hunting her for 2 months. She wants to know how they found her, and this is interesting. He says that they were tipped off about her location and he had come to take her home. So, who tipped them off on her location?
I think it was Ianthe.
How does she know?
Because she's working with the king, Megan. I know it.
Lucian takes a step towards her and she takes a step back. And Lucian's not expecting this from her. They're kind of doing this little song and dance. He's stepping towards her. She's stepping back away from him. And he tells her that he needs to take her home right away to Tamlin. And Feyre says no. She is an adamant no. I think it was one of the Olsen twins, not the Olsen twins. I guess they said it too, but their sister Elizabeth said the best advice that she'd ever been given from her sisters is that no is a full sentence, that you don't need to explain yourself ever. That is just no, period. That's it. It's a full sentence. And that's just what I was thinking about when I read this part of the book.
I love
She's
that.
Like, no.
Yeah, you don't have to fucking explain yourself. No, she ain't going with you.
Yeah. Now Lucian's taking her in and he can see that she's dressed in Illyrian fighting leathers. She says that the spring court stopped being her home when he locked her inside of the manor. Lucian keeps trying to step towards her, but she's inching away from him further towards the stream. Lucian says they all made mistakes.
That pisses me off.
They all made mistakes. You made a mistake, Lucian, and Tamlin made a mistake, but Feyre did not make a mistake.
Nobody else made a mistake besides you and Tamlin, you dummy.
And Ianthe.
And Ianthe, that bitch.
Yeah. Leave Feyre's name out your motherfucking mouth.
Yeah. You tell him, Megan. Back the fuck off.
Yeah. He also tells her to put the arrow down and that everything is a mess and she needs to go back. She is very clear. If the no wasn't clear enough, she now says, do not touch me. She knew that one touch and she was done. He would winnow her out of there and they wouldn't get far, but he's super fast, and that he would keep going and going and going until Reese couldn't locate her. Yeah. She does look away for 1 second just to see where she was and where the stream was, and it does cost her. Lucian reaches for Feyre and briefly touches her jacket, but then she is winnowing away from him and ends up on the other side of them, and now standing next to her is Reese.
That's right.
Reese's wings are gone, along with his fighting leathers, and he's in his usual High Lord black clothes. I mean, I get him getting rid of the wings because nobody knows that he has them, but she's wearing Illyrian fighting leathers. I don't get why it would be weird for him to also.
Yeah.
I don't get why he had to change back into his clothes. clothes. That was magic. And
Well, they
I mean,
don't know that he's half Illyrian, right?
no, but she's an Illyrian fighting leathers. I feel like he didn't have to change his full-on outfit
Yeah. I
in
think
this
he's very
moment.
just into like portraying this certain persona to people, I feel. Like he doesn't want to
Yeah,
give anything away or give them any hint to where to look to find out things. You know what I mean?
yeah. I wonder why they thought she was an Illyrian fighting leathers and
No.
he's just in his normal dress clothes, but
Maybe
it's
that's
just
why
fine.
Lucian thought that he was fucking up her brain, like
Right.
making her
Yeah.
into one of his warriors.
Warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that doesn't help the
No.
situation. Little Lucian, Rhysand purrs. Didn't the lady of the Autumn Court teach you that when a woman says no, she means it? Such a great
I
line.
love Rhysand.
Lucian calls him a prick, and then a whore, and then Feyre growls at Lucian. Lucian is shocked. He wants to know what happened to her, what had Rhysand done to her, and had he taken her mind. She's like, not having it. She's not even
Mhm.
responding to that. She says, do not come looking for me ever again. And Lucian's like, well, that's not going to happen because Tamlin will never stop looking for you. Rhysand has had enough, though. He tells Lucian to run along and to not come back, or he will send them back with their heads chopped off to prove a point about when Spring Court flunkies come into his lands uninvited. Because obviously that is a very sore subject for him, because the last time Spring Court people came into these lands and the Illyrian lands, his mother and sister ended up dead.
Yeah. But also I feel like that's how they say that they want war in Prythian, when other high lords intrude on territories that aren't theirs.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
And if Lucian had taken Feyre against her will, but I guess they're seeing as they're taking her back, like
Back,
she was
yeah.
taken against her will to begin with, but that's
Right.
not the case.
No.
Lucian is like, okay, Feyre, you made your point. Enough is enough. So he's had enough as well. Everyone is fed up, but no one is on the same page except
No.
Feyre and Rhysand. Rhysand says to him, be careful, or Feyre darling might send you back in pieces as well. And Feyre is just sick of them seeing her as someone who needs to be coddled, as a High Lord's pet. Lucian, though, is begging at this point. He's like, things got out of hand. They let Ianthe have way too much power. No shit,
No
Sherlock.
fucking shit.
And Feyre's like, I don't care about any of that. You gave up on me. You were my friend and you picked him. You picked obeying him when you saw what his orders and his rules did to me, even though you saw me wasting away day by day. She doesn't even want to talk about Tamlin. She doesn't want to talk about Ianthe. She wants to
Yeah.
address the person that's standing right in front of her. And she's like, no, you did this. You let this happen to me.
Which I
Or you,
fucking love, because Lucian is in the wrong 110%. It's not just Tamlin, it's Lucian too.
yeah. And she's like, you're begging me to come back? What about when I begged you
Yeah.
to help me?
Yeah. He's so fucking
And
pig-headed. I just fucking hate him right now.
I know. And Lucian's like, well, the night court's so much better.
Yes,
And
it
then
is.
it is actually. But she has to remember who she is,
Right.
and that she has only seen the Huon City, which is the court of nightmares,
Yeah.
and that she doesn't know anything about Valaris. And so she has to keep her friends in the city safe.
This is my notable line for chapter 47, page 461. She says to Lucian, when you spend so long trapped in darkness, Lucian, you find that the darkness begins to stare back. Tell Tamlin I said, choking on his name, on the thought of what he did to Rhys, to his family. If he sends anyone else into these lands, I will hunt each and every one of you down, and I will demonstrate exactly what the darkness has taught me. Oh, I love that line.
And during your line that you just said, this is when she grows talons and wings to everyone's surprise.
Yes.
There was genuine pain on Lucian's face that she can see, and he just nods to the sentinels to go. And before he leaves, he tells Rhys, you're dead, and so is your court.
We'll see.
Rhysand wants to know how she did that, meaning her wings. And she's like, well, of course, it's from my shape-shifting ability, duh.
Like, where have you been?
Yeah, where have you been? I have powers of all the 7 High Lords, Rhysand. He also tells her that it was a very convincing performance, but she tells him that she just showed them what they wanted to see.
Mhm.
He then changes back into his fighting leathers and she thinks, my warrior. But then she's like, wait, what? He isn't my anything.
I
I
fucking roll.
roll. He then scoops her up to fly to a different location, and Reese wants to make sure that she's okay. And she said that the fact she felt little concerned her more than the encounter itself. He also says he knew things were bad, but he thought Lucian would have stepped in and tried to protect her. And she sadly says, me too.
Me 3. He should
Me
have.
4.
He fucking should
He
have.
should have. He would just open his mouth, and then the second time I was like,
Yeah, like
no.
he's being
He's
an
like,
enabler.
okay.
To me,
Yeah.
honestly, that's worse than Tamlin. It's worse than doing the action when you are the fucking enabler because it wouldn't be happening
Hmm.
if you weren't enabling it.
I know. There's only so much Favor can do to stand up for herself.
Yeah.
Though she had all these powers she didn't know she had. Maybe now if she was there, she could kick some fucking ass, but
Mhm.
whatever. It's fine. He looks at her. He tells her that she looks good with wings. And then he kisses her brow. And then she says she no longer felt cold.
I felt hot
Man,
after that too.
if he kissed my brow, I also would be like,
You would melt into a puddle.
my face is already red from this drink, and we haven't even gotten to the sexy bits yet.
I know.
We're about to get to one sexy bit. Chapter 48. They are now at a very tiny inn, which every room was full besides a bed in the attic. Reese had not wanted anyone at the inn to know exactly who he was and who was staying under that roof. So I think that's why he didn't push it either. I think he could have been like, well, I'm your high lord and give me your best room. But he doesn't want anyone to know that
Yeah,
they're there.
exactly.
When they got to their tiny room, it was dry but not warm. There wasn't a fireplace or really any room for them to walk around. There was also only one bed. And this is when Reese puts up his hands and is like, I did ask for two.
Not my fault. Don't blame me.
Yeah, exactly. Feyre says that they will need the body heat anyways. And when I feel like Reese looks at her, she's like, no. I used to share a bed all the time with my sister, so I'm used to it. She also tells him that she is hungry. And he's like, okay, well, I'll go downstairs and get you some food. And he puts on a cloak because even though he had dampened his power, his face was still recognizable. And I mean, I would be looking at him the same way Feyre's looking at him. And he clocks it. He's like, I like the way that you look at me. And she says, well, I was scared of you at first. And he's like, no, you weren't. Maybe you were nervous about him, but you weren't scared that he had been around enough people who had been terrified of him to know the difference. He also states that maybe that's why he wanted to be around her so much because she wasn't scared of him.
Yeah.
He leaves to go get them food, and she started changing out of her wet clothes into her warmer, drier clothes. As she waits for Reese to come back, she's thinking about how Lucian has probably already reported to Tamlin about what happened today. She is thinking about how Lucian was about to take her against her will.
Yeah. And this is my notable line for chapter 48, page 467. She is thinking to herself, I had loved the High Lord, who had shown me the comforts and wonders of Prithian. I had loved the High Lord, who let me have the time and food and safety to paint. Maybe a small part of me might always care for him, but Amarantha had broken us both, or broken me, so that who he was and what I was no longer fit.
They're no longer two puzzle pieces that fit together.
I mean, they were never really this whole book, but
I know. If you really think back at what their relationship looked like in ACOTAR, it really wasn't
yeah,
there.
like they didn't even date. He did nothing while she was under the mountain. I'm
What do you
sorry,
mean,
Feyre.
Amanda?
I
He
can't
sat
relate.
there.
I can't relate, Feyre. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not with you here, right now.
He was like a statue. He was a model. He was sitting so perfectly and so stilly.
Yeah.
He didn't have his fiddle, so he was depressed.
He has to play happy music to feel happy.
Reese came back with their dinner. He brought back stew, a meat pie, and wine. And then he starts to get changed out of his wet clothes into warmer and drier clothes before joining her on the bed to eat because there wasn't even room for a table in their room. He tells her about how if he doesn't use his power, This is what Amanda was talking about earlier, that he gets antsy and that he could go insane. And so he knows when he needs to release his power, and Amryn taught him how to control it. She thinks that everyone adds value to his life and that she was just some weird hybrid that was more trouble than anything else. Feyre wants to know if Rhys thought if she would go with Lucien today.
Yes, and this is actually another notable line I have for chapter 48, page 469. Rhysand says, I heard every word between you. I knew you could take care of yourself, and yet I found myself deciding that if you took his hand, I would find a way to live with it. It would be your choice. And if he grabbed me, then I would have torn apart the world to get you back. Oh, I just fucking love this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he knows that they are a mated bond,
Mm-hmm.
he still is giving her the choice to make her own decision.
Yeah.
But also says he would have protected her if Lucien tried to literally kidnap her, which is the best of both worlds.
At that point, all bets are off, and he is going to town on his revenge if they had taken her against her will.
Part of me wants Lucien to have tried just to see what Rhysand would have done to him.
Yeah, fuck around and find out. Don't worry, there's still time for that.
True.
Feyre says that if Lucien had attacked Rhysand today, she would have shot at Lucien. And Rhysand says, I know.
I love them.
I know. Then Feyre says, you still owe me 2 thoughts from when I first met the inner circle. I said 5 things. You had only said 3, so you still owe me 2 thoughts. And he says, I'm thinking that I look at you and feel like I'm dying, like I can't breathe. I'm thinking that I want you so badly, I can't concentrate half the time I'm around you. And this room is too small for me to properly bed you, especially with the wings. Those are epic 2 thoughts.
I know. And
but she says, yes, and she says back to him, even though she doesn't owe him any more thoughts, she says, I'm thinking that I can't stop thinking about you. And it's been that way for a long while, even before I left the spring court. And maybe that makes me a traitorous, lying piece of trash. But of course, Rhysand cuts her off and is like, no, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
And so Feyre, of course, you get too close and she has to back up. So she's like, okay, let's go to bed. And he gets into bed with her and she is shaking. And she says it's because her hair is wet. He then snuggles in behind her and wraps his wing around them, cocooning them in to keep them warm.
Oh.
What could this man ever do to piss me off? Actually, that's not true. He has pissed me off in recent books, but that's a story for another time. But I still love him. Still love him, but he did piss me off.
Well, at least it's not as bad as Lucien.
No.
Yeah.
Feyre starts to play with his wings, and he tells her that her fingers are cold, and touching his wings is sensitive. But she continues to touch his wings, and she can feel against her that he is now hard.
Ooh!
He starts circling her stomach, and she starts to grind up against him. And he's like, Feyre, what do you want? And then, of course, she's like, I just want to have fun. I need a distraction, which causes him to pause behind her because that is not what he wanted her to say.
No, and I was so proud of her for what she had just said to him before this scene, where she's like, I was thinking about you even in the spring court. So I thought she was going to actually
admit something,
like spill her feelings. Yeah. But of course, she goes back to her old fucking ways. Deny till she dies.
Yeah, I think Rhysand also was thinking the same way you were, that she just admitted that she's been thinking about me for a long time and that she wants him. And now here's the moment. Like, we're being intimate with each other, we're touching, and then she drops the, well, I just want fun and distraction with you. I don't want anything further. And he's like,
yeah.
But at the same time, he's also not going to tell her no. Like,
he's like, wah.
Yeah. He finally has, like, her not accepting him, but wanting to be intimate with him. And he's been waiting so long for this. So I guess he's like, we'll go from here and see what happens.
Now he's a soft pretzel, okay?
So he continues, though. And then they have a lot of fun.
Ooh.
A lot of
tongue
fun.
hockey.
And
tonsil hockey.
Yes, in the middle of this fun, she turns towards him and she kisses him. He doesn't kiss her first this time around. She is the one that goes the distance and closes her mouth onto his. After she finishes, she says she's going to eat Rhysand alive. And he stops her because he says that when Feyre licks him for the first time, he wants to not be in a tiny inn with everyone able to hear him roar. And that when he licks her for the first time, he wants her spread out like a feast. And then he isn't going to bed her when he can't even fuck her against the wall.
Spicy.
So sexy. If anyone ever said that to me,
So sexy.
I would be like, marry me.
I would be like, there's a wall right here. Here we go.
There's a perfectly good slanted
get
wall right here.
Yeah. We could be slanted, 45-degree angle. Who cares?
Yeah.
Just push me up against it.
Just do whatever you need to do.
Oh, I think I saw a wall 3 blocks to the left. No, I'm just kidding.
We can go outside.
Just put me up against a tree at this point.
Put me out of my misery, Rhysand. But
yeah,
he's a good guy, and he tucks her in close and starts moving his hands in a more soothing motion. And she falls asleep faster than she thought that she would, being in his arms. And she did not have a single nightmare that night.
Yay.
Yay. No more nightmares.
No more nightmares.
Okay, chapter 49, moving on. Before I get too hot and bothered. I'm already hot and bothered.
I'm already hot and bothered too.
The next morning, Feyre wakes up feeling safe with Rhysand's arms around her. She turns over to look at Rhys, and his eyes are open as she nestles into his arms, and they're just looking at each other. She asks, "Why did you make the bargain with me?" And of course, now he's the one ruining the moment, not Feyre.
Of course, yeah.
He gives her an answer that I don't think she was expecting, which is he said that he did it to make a statement to Amarantha to piss off Tamlin in a way to keep her alive that wouldn't be seen as merciful. She feels like a pawn in his game at this time. She's no longer in this lovey-dovey cocoon bubble that she was in. He completely just popped it. And he goes, "Well, I would do everything to keep my family and my court safe."
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah. Now her happiness from waking up this morning is wearing off, and she feels that maybe they would be better off pretending nothing happened at all last night. So literally the steps forward that he got with her, now she's taking 20 steps back because of this conversation. They spend the rest of the day on her magical training, and they don't speak at all. At the end of the day, he is flying them back when she finally looks at him and is like, "What?" Because he's looking at her and they haven't spoken all day. And he tells her that there is one more story that he has to tell her. Before he can tell her anything, though, he roars in pain. He is being shot by numerous ash arrows. Rhys tries to use his powers, but he's unable to, and his wings are being shredded. He basically uses the last strength that he has to toss Feyre as far as he could away from the people who are attacking them.
Wait, actually, what was the story that he was going to say? Was he going to tell her about the mated bond?
I think so. Yeah, because he's like, "I have one last story that I have to tell you." And it would be that story.
Yeah, I was like, what else would it be? It has to be that.
Yeah, and he doesn't get the opportunity to do it.
I wish he thought about this before she goes and hides at the House of Mist.
Yeah.
Because he really did try to tell her, at least.
Yeah. I think he does try to say this to her, but she's not having it at that point.
Yeah.
She starts falling to the ground, but she throws up a shield of wind, but she doesn't trust it to keep her up for too long. She cannot feel Rhys through the bond, which causes major panic.
Yeah.
She is not going to leave him behind, though. She's going to track and rescue him from whomever had ambushed them. It's completely dark out now, and they had never been out this late, and she can hear all of the awful creatures hunting and preying on these little creatures in the night. She changes her vision so that she could see in the dark as she starts to winnow to the last place she had been with Rhys. She finds the location pretty quickly and she sees his blood, and even though she didn't like the sight of it, she knew that it meant he was alive. She said that whoever took them were all dead. She is not coming to play.
No.
You take her man, even though she won't say it's her man, but there's consequences.
Yeah, you take her man, she'll take your life.
That's literally what happened.
Yep.
They tried to trick her by going into 2 different directions with his scent, but she knew which way was the correct one because she could smell her scent on Reese too. And I think it's because she thinks they were together the night before, but I think it's just because, like, of the mated bond. I
Oh.
mean, it probably could be both because they haven't taken a bath, but I think that she could probably smell herself in him because of the bond, but I don't know. It could
Yeah.
just be.
That's cool. I didn't think of that. I just thought it was because they were all over each other and he was touching her and, you know.
Maybe. It could be both, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that totally would make sense, but
Yeah. When she arrives to the cave they were holding him in, she snuck past the guards and saw that they were whipping him when she arrives. She used 4 ashwood arrows that she had made into daggers and starts slicing their throats. No mercy this time.
mhm.
She was winnowing and stabbing until all of those in the cave that were keeping Reese captive were dead. She wants Reese to winnow them back to safety, but he can't. He still has 7 ash arrows in his wings. She winnows them slowly and exerting a lot of power to get them to a different cave she had seen earlier that day while they were training. Go, Feyre, use your powers. You're so powerful.
Yes. I love this scene because you actually see her in action now.
Yes.
She's always so timid about being in a fight or being in battle,
Hmm.
and everybody around her is worried about her being in battle, and then look at what she fucking does. She's a badass.
Yeah, she's like, I got this.
Yeah.
Holds my beer. While she's removing Reese's arrow, she starts to tell him a story. And the story is about how she was painting and how she painted flowers for Elaine as she rips out some ash arrows, how she painted fire for Nesta as she rips out some ash arrows. And
Yes, and this is my notable line for chapter 49. I love, love, love this line,
mhm.
but because now I know why I love it so much. But
but you
page
but
488.
you picked this before you even knew what was going to happen in
Yes.
54, so you obviously liked it anyways.
Yes, definitely. Chapter 49, page 488, Favor says, I painted stars and the moon and clouds and just endless dark sky, and I never knew why. I rarely went outside at night. Usually, I was so tired from hunting that I just wanted to sleep. But I wonder if some part of me knew what was waiting for me, that I would never be a gentle grower of things or someone who burns like fire, but that I would be quiet and enduring and as faceted as the night, that I would have beauty for those who knew where to look. And if people didn't bother to look, but only fear it, then I didn't particularly care for them. Anyway, I wonder if even in my despair and hopelessness, I was never truly alone. I wonder if I was looking for this place, looking for you all.
Yes, you were.
She was, but we'll find out why very soon.
Very soon. Reese says before he passes out, basically after this line, which he goes still after he hears what she painted during the story.
Mhm.
He says that they were attacked by Hybern and the shackles were special that nullified his powers that Amanda so greatly explained to us earlier. And
Thank you,
and she
Megan.
tells him to rest and he tells her, I was looking for you too, for passing out, which obviously we know what that fucking means.
Yeah, now I know. I love it. I fucking love it. I get it now, Megan. I get it. I am obsessed with Reesan. Obsessed.
Obsessed. Thank you
I'm
for being on the
obsessed.
train with me now.
Yes.
Before
It's sick how obsessed I am.
I was already there and
Sick.
I feel like you were looking at me like I was fucking crazy at the end of
Yeah,
Akatar.
I'm like, why does she like this asshole so much? Like, he's not even nice, but
Ugh,
he
he
is.
is, Amanda.
He is the bad boy with the soft heart that every fucking girl wants.
Yeah, like the touch her and die. If I found a boy like
Yeah.
that in real life, I'd be like, I will literally do whatever you want.
Yeah. He's coming. We're manifesting
We're
it for you.
manifesting the touch her or die boyfriend for me.
Yes.
Chapter 50. The next morning, all of the creatures of the night are gone, and she notices that Reese is not healing properly. She knows it's because of the poison that was in the ash arrows. He is burning up, and she can't get him back to their friends, so she needs to go on another mission. She wraps
Mhm.
him in as many layers as she could spare and takes a cloak to go track down an old friend. the cereal.
The cereal.
She sets her cloak trap near running water and she waited for about 2 hours. She was praying to the mother that the cereal would come and she would be able to get her answers to save Reese. All of a sudden, the forest went quiet and then the cereal stepped into her trap, yelling just like it had the first time. She said that the cereal was just as horrific as she remembered. The cereal calls her Feyre Cursebreaker, and she tells it she has need of the cereal's services. She wants to know what kind of poison that had been in the arrows and how to heal Rhysand. We know that she will need to give him her blood and...
Yes, this is my notable line for chapter 50, page 492. He says, if you wish to speed your mate's healing, in addition to your blood, a pink-flowered weed sprouts by the river. Make him chew it. What did you say? She says to him. You did not know then. She says, say it. He said, the Lord of the Night Court is your mate. I fucking knew it, Megan. I knew it.
What a way to find out.
What a way to find out. I also love that it's the same cereal that comes back.
Yeah.
Because, he's not the only one out there.
Yeah. Or do they all just know the same things? I don't know. There's so many questions I have about the cereal. But anyways.
Okay. Well, I assumed it was the same one. But you're right. Maybe not.
I think it's the same one, but I don't know.
Interessante.
Feyre is shook. The cereal is spilling the tea and was like, oh, that's so interesting that you didn't know this. Is the cereal me? Because
Yes.
that's how I respond to you when you say things like that. I'm like, oh, that is so interesting,
Now I get where your
Amanda.
inspiration is from answering my predictions.
Yeah.
Or responding to my
cereal.
predictions. So funny.
Feyre is spiraling. She's like, I'm not Tamlin's mate. I'm Rhysand's mate. She wants to know if Rhysand knows, and the cereal says yes. She doesn't feel worthy, though, to be the mate of the most powerful High Lord in the history of Prythian. The cereal's like, you were made from the power of all 7 High Lords. Does that not make you his equal? She finds the pink weed and basically stomps back to the cave where Rhysand is half delirious and still dying. She chucks the weed at him and makes him drink her blood. She tells him that he doesn't get to ask questions. He is only going to answer hers. And he's like, okay.
He's like, oh shit, what'd I do?
She says to him, how long have you known I'm your mate? He knows that she has now ensnared the cereal. And he's like, well, I suspected for a while, but I knew for sure when Amarantha was killing you. But when she was made into High Fae, that it snapped into place. And she's like, okay, well, when were you going to tell me? He wasn't sure when he was going to tell her.
Even though he just was. Why didn't he just fucking say that he just was going to tell her?
I know. I don't know. He's like shook right now. He's like half dead and trying to get better.
He's like, why did you tell me?
She's, yeah.
Drink this
He's like, oh my
blood and eat this weed.
This is like the second time he's been ambushed. The past 2 days. He tells her, though, that Mor and Amren do know that they're mates and that Cassian and Azriel suspect, which probably doesn't help either, that all of them kind of know and she doesn't know. So she's, again, left out of the loop and out of the circle of knowing things.
Sensitive subject.
So she's like, I deserve to know. Yeah, it's definitely a sensitive subject for her. She just tells him, I deserved to know, no matter what, that you promised me to tell the truth and not to keep secrets from her. So that's basically where her line is, and he crossed it. And Rhys is like, of course I wanted to tell you, but do you think it was nice to hear the other night when you said you just wanted to have fun and distraction from me? And so he was also conflicted because he knew she would have a lifetime of assassins trying to come after her because of who he was. And she's like, I don't want to hear this. This isn't the point. You managed me and you felt like you knew best.
Yeah.
Which is true, and that's what she's been saying all along, how she doesn't wanna be treated like that, and Rhysand, for the most part, doesn't treat her like that. He does treat her with respect, letting her make her own decisions, and in this moment, she feels, I think, extra betrayed because he's never acted that way
Yeah.
before towards her.
But I feel like she was giving
She
him mixed
well,
signals too. Like, he's not just gonna come out and say it if you're not feeling it too. He doesn't wanna convince her into
no,
it. You know what I mean? I feel like he wants her to come to it on her own.
I know, but at the same time, the mating bond is the mating bond. It's not really a choice that you have. Yes, it's a choice to accept or not, but to know it exists and is there, I think is what
Yeah.
she wanted to know. To let her make that choice to
Yeah.
accept it or
I
not.
see. I do see both sides, but I don't think it's fair that she gets to take her time figuring out that she doesn't belong with Tamlin and that she's coming into her own self as a high fae, and then he can't make one mistake. Now I feel like you during ACOTAR
Well,
defending Rhysand.
this is her point of view though.
Yeah.
This is her
Yeah.
story. So we have to be on Feyre's
I
side no
am on
matter
her
what.
side for sure. I totally, totally am. I just feel like he deserved a little bit more grace in this moment than she gave him.
Yes, but that's not what our girl Feyre
Yeah,
gives
no,
nobody
she's like
grace.
ungraceable.
Yeah, she's like, absolutely not. You
Yeah.
fuck around, you find out.
She's a boss bitch.
Yeah, literally. She wants to go back to the Illyrian camps right this instant. She's like putting her foot down. She can see the pain and the sorrow in his eyes, and he saw the hurt in hers because her heart had been repaired by him, and now
Mhm.
she was hurting. Even with the agony in his eyes, he winnowed them back to the Illyrian camp. Chapter 51. They slam into the ground back in the Illyrian camp, and she doesn't think he meant for them to land outside of the house in the mud, but he still wasn't fully healed from the poison in the Ashwood arrows. Cassian and Morris see them land and come running outside. They assess Feyre and see that she's not injured, and so Cassian continues on to Rhys. Feyre says to Mor that she wants her to take her somewhere far away, right now. Rhys is trying to get Feyre's attention, but she is begging Mor to take her away. Mor looks between them both and takes Feyre's hand and winnows her away from the camp.
She's such a girl's girl. Love more.
I know, I love Mor. Especially in this moment. She just like takes Feyre's
Yes.
needs and
I love
gives it
her
to
for
her.
this because I would do the same exact thing for any of my friends, and I just love this.
Yes, me too. They end up in a snowy mountaintop where there is a cabin. It is safe and warded against winnowing. Only their family is allowed in, and she snaps at Mor. Am I only allowed in because I'm his mate? Mor is like, oh, did he finally tell you? And she's like, no, the Surreal did.
Do you think Feyre would have been pissed if Rhysand told her?
Yeah, no, I think if he had told her that night in the inn when they were cuddling together and was like, I have to tell you something that's been weighing on my mind. We've been getting a lot closer, and this is something that I think that you need to know before we go any
Yeah.
further. And I think that would have been an appropriate time before they kind of hooked up.
Yeah.
So-
I think too, though, if she didn't answer in the way that she did about wanting to just have fun and let loose or whatever the hell her line was, he would have ended up telling her.
Yeah. But hindsight is always
But
2020.
yes.
Mor tells her that Rhys will try to find her, and she tells Mor to relay a message that she does not want to be found for a while.
And this is my notable line for chapter 51, page 499. Morris says to her, he wanted to tell you, and it killed him not to. But I've never seen him so happy as he is when he is with you. And I don't think that has anything to do with you being his mate. This is also another reason why I love Mor in this moment. She's basically saying to Feyre, it does not matter if you're a mated bond or not. It's clear that you guys are both happier.
Yes.
Even though she says it for Rhysand right now because, Feyre's wicked pissed.
Mm-hmm.
But that is like the best kind of girlfriend. She'll help you and she'll take you away, but this is a good motherfucking man that you're gonna lose. Think about it, take your time, but
Really think
you guys
about
make
it.
each other happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Amryn
Yeah.
told her before Starfall that she'd never seen Rhysand this happy since Feyre's been around. So it's like, hello, wake up.
Oh,
Even though it seemed like Amryn knew about it before this moment which we'll get into later in the episode of what Amryn's advice was to Rhysand when Feyre was being locked in the manor. It seems like she already knew what they were. But the video I saw said that Amryn sniffs Feyre when she enters the room at their first meeting at the House of Wind, and she looks at Rhysand after she does it, and he nods at her.
Yeah, Amryn already knew, and that was wild. When you said that to me, I was like, oh shit. And this is why people reread books. I'm not a rereader, but I literally get it when it comes to ACOTAR, Fourth Wing. Like, they're so fucking good, and the foreshadowing is so delicious.
No, it really is. It's
So
just
good.
these little things that you pick up when you do another read through. And even after
Yeah.
that, every time you read it, you'll pick up on something different. And even
Yeah.
still, people will say things. And I'm like, oh my God, what?
I know. I love it.
Yeah, so in this moment, Moore is just trying to hype Reese up to Feyre, and Feyre just really doesn't want to hear it. She's not in the space to hear it in this moment. I think she's just very focused, her one-tracked mind
Yeah.
about how her feelings
Mhm.
are hurt, and that's all she can focus on. So Moore is like, okay, well, I'll back up on you in 3 days after she lets her into the house, shows her around a little bit, make sure that she has food and etc. Explains the house to her like Amanda did earlier. And Moore's like, okay, please don't die, and I'll be back in 3 days.
Yeah, I'm so kind of surprised that she lets her there for 3 days, which I'm sure seems like half a day to them who are immortal. But I was like, damn, 3 days you're gonna leave her in this? She's gonna be so fucking bored.
I know. She stays there
But
for a long fucking time. I just
yeah.
kept thinking you could have had all of this time together because after day 3, you already knew you wanted to see him again. But, anyways, I'll talk about that when we get to chapter 53.
Okay.
Chapter 52. After days of not bathing, she is excited to finally take a bath, even with all the emotional turmoil going on. She's just sitting in the bath thinking, oh my God, Rhysand is my mate. She also realizes that she's starving because she hasn't eaten in quite some time. All she had been concerned about in the past couple days is Rhysand's injuries and for her to protect him. Feyre is so surprised that Rhysand suspected that they were mates before she had even freed them from Amarantha. She then realizes that her relationship with Tamlin had been doomed from the start. But now knowing this, she doesn't feel like a lying piece of traitorous filth anymore because she had just left Tamlin to really find her mate.
Yep.
She is confused on how Rhysand had gone so long without saying anything, knowing she had been sharing a bed with Tamlin. And she thinks, well, maybe he didn't even want this bond.
Of course, that's where her mind goes.
Feyre then thinks to herself that she doesn't even know how she would have reacted to this news while she was still sharing a bed with Tamlin. So maybe that's why he didn't tell her. But she still
Mhm.
wishes that she knew because she spent so much time hating herself for fighting her feelings towards him and for her feelings towards him. So she's like, this
Which
makes
is
so
understandable.
much sense now.
Yeah, I could see that part of why she's pissed because she really did just beat herself up so much about feeling like a traitor and leaving Tamlin for him and all that stuff. So that I completely understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now Feyre is looking out the window at the snow, just sad music playing in the background. And she's wondering if Moore told Rhysand where she was and if he would come looking for her. Obviously, he's going to.
Yes.
The next
He's on
morning,
his way right now, actually.
literally flying there. The next morning, while she's doing these mundane tasks, she's just having inner monologues this entire time while she's alone. She says in her head, I ran away precisely how Rhysand expected me to run, how I told him anyone in their right mind would run from him. Like a coward, like a fool, she left him injured in the freezing mud. So now she's in full regrets about how she left things off
Mhm.
with Rhysand. And she's like, I even said literally the day before that she would never walk away from him. And that was the first thing she did after saying that.
Yes. Listen, at least she's self-aware.
She's always been a self aware queen. Feyre is really in her feels here. She wanted honesty from him, and when he was finally giving her that honesty that she demanded, she never even let him explain himself. And now she's feeling like she shouldn't have walked away.
It might have taken her a day or two, but at least she is self-aware enough to know that she made a mistake too. Rhysand made a mistake in not telling her, but she made a mistake too running away instead of facing it head on and talking to him right there and then. So at least she does come to terms with it.
Yes, she does.
Mhm.
Now she is in the house. What is it that now she's in the house bored? What is that thing from
I'm
TikTok?
bored
Like,
in the house and I'm in the house bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house bored.
yes, that is her at this moment. She is looking through the entire cabinet, inside closets, like everything, which as she should. She's Resan's maid. She's like, what kind of dirty secrets are in here? Let me look through
Yeah,
everything.
I'd do the same fucking thing if I was bored.
Yeah, me too. She finds paint cans, though, on her search, and she starts gathering supplies so that she can start painting. She paints all day and night, only to stop to eat and sleep. She hears a knock on the door the next day, and she's hoping that maybe it's Reese, but it's more. Moore looks around the cabin and sees all the painting that she's been doing. She says, "You've certainly been busy." She sees that she's painted all different types of decorations around the house, what looks to be Illyrian wings on the fireplace, and she's disturbed by the painting of Amron's eyes on the threshold. Feyre gets an update from Moore about her trip to the Court of Nightmares. She says that her father's still recovering and that she broke some more bones in her father's body, and now her mother has now banished her from their personal household, which just makes Moore laugh.
Feyre's asking her how this is all affecting her, basically. And this is
Yeah.
my notable line for chapter 52, page 510, where Moore says, Rhys gave me permission the day he became High Lord to kill them all whenever I pleased. I attend these meetings, go to the Court of Nightmares to remind them of that sometimes, and to keep communication between our two courts flowing, however strained it might be. If I were to march in there tomorrow, though, and slaughter my parents, he wouldn't blink. Perhaps be inconvenienced by it, but he would be pleased.
Yes.
Which just shows again what a great man he is, protecting his younger cousin.
Yes.
Actually, I don't know if she's younger. Is she younger?
I think she's younger. I don't
I
know
just
though.
assumed she was, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Then we get some more of the backstory between Moore, Cassian, and Azriel, like Amanda went over earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then Moore wants Feyre to paint all of the inner circle's eyes so that they can watch over her. At the end of this chapter, Moore says to Feyre, "Is it so bad being Rhysand's mate?" And Feyre says, "No, it's not." And then that's when she knew she had her answer, even though I think she knew she had her answer like, I don't know,
Yeah.
paragraphs ago.
Yeah. She was like, day 2, she knew. But
Yeah. Whatever makes you sleep at night, Feyre.
yeah.
Chapter 53. Moore stayed overnight with her and also just decided to paint.
Favorite is thinking, and then I would go home to Valeris, where I would finally walk through the artist's corner and enter those shops and galleries and learn what they knew. And maybe one day I would open my own shop, not to sell my work, but to teach others. Maybe teach the others who were like me, broken in places and trying to fight it, trying to learn who they were around the dark and pain. And I would go home at the end of every day exhausted but content, fulfilled, happy. I love this.
I know she finally can envision her future that's happy.
Yeah, and she's not only painting again, but she wants to teach people to paint, which is, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, shows the most passion you have for something is when you want to teach others how to do it too. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Then it's 5 more days passed, and she has painted every room of the cottage. And after these 5 days, she is sick of her own thoughts. She is sick of waiting and actually wanting some company. She then heard some banging on the door, and she thought Moore had returned to check up on her. But when she opened the door, it was not Moore who was leaning against the threshold. But thank fucking God, because literally 5 more days, it had 3, so it's been like a week.
Over a week.
She's
Yeah.
when she already knew what she wanted to do,
I
and
know.
all of this time she could have spent with Rhysand as her mate. That's what
I
pisses
think
me off.
painting, though, she kind of loses track of time. So I feel like it probably didn't feel like 5 days to her, but when she realized it, she was like, oh shit, it's been 5 fucking days. But
I don't
also, I'm
know.
just assuming all this.
She makes me so mad. But now we
I
have
know.
arrived at the most epic chapter ever. My favorite chapter of all time. Here we
Yes.
go.
It was so good. I can't wait to talk about it.
Chapter 54. I wish I could just read you the chapter. Like,
I
that's just how
know.
fucking awesome it is.
Story time. Well, you actually did read it to me once. Or did I read it? No, you read
No,
it.
I read it. Yeah.
Megan read this chapter to me. If you
You
guys
can.
want Megan to also read this chapter to you, we'll go on live and read it. You let us know.
Yes. You let us know. Send us a DM.
Yes.
Rhysand was standing on the other side of the door. He looked freezing and his cheeks were pink. She knew, though, that one word from her and he would leave, and he was just standing there, waiting. She thought he was beautiful, strong, a selfless male who sacrificed and wrecked himself for his family and his people, and he didn't feel like he was good enough for anyone. She wondered if he thought that he wasn't good enough for her. So she opens the door and lets him in.
Yay. Step 1, check. He's in the house.
Yes. Let Rhysand into the house. Step 1 is
Yes.
complete. Rhysand is taking in all of the pictures that she painted around the cabin. He wants to know why she didn't paint his eyes with the rest of the inner circle. She said at first it was because she was mad at him, and then she was worried she would like them too much. She didn't know how he felt, and she didn't want to be looking at him all day wishing he was there. He confirms that Moore didn't tell him where Feyre was, but that there were only so many locations that were secure, so he knew she most likely was at the cabin at the House of Mist.
Mhm.
He flew there, which took him a long time.
Probably 8 days.
Yes. Yeah. Feyre is now just making annoying small conversation by just asking, "How are your injuries doing?"
Of course, she's avoiding the inevitable.
Yeah.
Do we
And
expect anything less?
no,
No.
no. Rhysand says, though, that he is completely healed thanks to her. And Feyre's like, "Oh, you must be hungry after flying so long. I'll heat you something up." And Rhysand is shocked. He's like, "You'd make me food?" And then that's when we learn about what the implications are of when they accept the bond, when they provide the mate something to eat. Feyre wants him to tell her the whole story, and once he's done with the story, she'll decide if she'll give him the soup or not. Then the long story begins. It is an epic story and it is the most masterful setups I have ever read. And I just need to say this 5,000 more times.
Yes. It's so true, though.
Yes. We then get the backstory of Rhysand being captured by Amarantha during the war, which Amanda went over earlier. We then learn the events that occurred after he was released and saved by his friends and his father. We learn when Amarantha returned centuries later, he still wanted to kill her for what she had done to him and his soldiers in the war. He planned on killing her himself the night under the mountain when Amarantha had planned the get together. He talks about how Amarantha, though, was quicker and that she poisoned their drinks and all of his powers went to her. We got that story a little bit earlier in the episode. After she took his powers, she slaughtered half of the Night Court and she kept looking at him. And so she knew what she wanted from him. And later that night, he fucked her so good that
Yep.
she would keep wanting it again and again, and he was going to use whatever he could as a weapon against her.
Mhm.
Then he says the curse on Tamlin came.
Here's my notable line, one of two that I have for chapter 54 because it's so delicious. It needs 2 lines. Page 521. He says, 3 years ago, I began to have these ... dreams. At first, they were glimpses, as if I were staring through someone else's eyes. A crackling hearth in a dark home, a bale of hay in a barn, a warren of rabbits. The images were foggy, like looking through cloudy glass. They were brief, a flash here and there every few months. I thought nothing of them until one of the images was a hand, this beautiful human hand, holding a brush, painting flowers on a table.
So that's when we know for the first time that Rhysand is having vivid dreams, are actually not just dreams. I guess he is dreaming, but they're actually things Feyre was doing.
Yeah, and they had never met up until this point. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Exactly.
crazy what the mate bond is.
I know. They don't even know each other. So
Yeah.
then one day he pushes back a thought of the night sky.
Hmm.
Literally mind blown because we just
Yes.
learned a couple of chapters before why she painted the night sky. She didn't really know
Hmm.
why she did it, but it's because he sent her that thought because it brought
Yeah.
him so much joy.
She's like, "I never go outside. Like, why the fuck do I wanna paint this?" But
Yeah.
she didn't even know it was her destiny.
Then her dreams started to change a little bit. She started dreaming and having nightmares about the creatures in Perithian. And he's like, well, that's different. And the dreams are also a bit more clear. He said it was no longer like this fog around it. And that's when he realized that she was now over the wall. She was in Perithian, but he
Mhm.
couldn't pinpoint her location because those creatures belong to every court. But
Yeah.
then she has a dream about Calanmai, and he then convinces Amarantha to go to the event. He says, she was a little paranoid because the deadline was coming up with Tamlin, and she agreed for him to go and see if there was any chatter, any traitors in their midst that he could report back on. And
Okay.
then that's when he sees Feyre at this encounter or at Calanmai, and those three awful fairies are around her, and he knew exactly what they were thinking. And he walked up to her and he said, there you are. I've been looking for you. Which is so goddamn good. Like the whole setup to that point, because he was actually looking for her.
I know. I know. I melted. I melted, Megan. Because when you
Yes.
read it in ACOTAR, especially as a first time reader, which I'm sure you experienced too,
Yep.
you're agreeing with Feyre. You're like, oh, he's trying to help me out for some reason. Like, oh, he's just getting these guys away from me.
Yep.
But there's such a bigger picture here that you're going to find out about. So, this is my notable line number 2 for chapter 54, page 522. Reese says, you looked at me, and I knew you had no idea who I was, that I might have seen you in your dreams, but you hadn't seen mine. And you were just human. You were so young and breakable and had no interest in me whatsoever. And I knew that if I stayed too long, someone would see and report back, and she'd find you. So I started walking away, thinking you'd be glad to get rid of me. But then you called after me, like you couldn't let go of me just yet, whether you knew it or not. And I knew we were on dangerous ground somehow. I knew that I could never speak to you or see you or think of you again.
I know. She didn't want to leave. She turns back and asks him more questions.
Yes, and as I was reading that line, I was just thinking to myself that there's that scene that Feyre is like, you never married to him, to Rhys, and he just gives her whatever answer. But after 500 years of being alive, he never marries. And this is why, because he
Mm-hmm.
never had a mate
Yeah, he
before.
was waiting for her.
Yeah, for 500 years? Crazy.
Yeah.
Like, he could have married without the bond, but he didn't. Thank
Mm-hmm.
God he didn't.
Yeah,
So,
his mom hid the wedding ring in the Weaver's cottage.
yeah, that's
And who
right.
got that ring out? Feyre,
Feyre, she
darling.
got her own wedding ring out.
Yeah. So after this encounter, he takes the three fairies back to Amarantha, warped their minds to say that they were traitors, and Amarantha tortured them. And it was like, good job, you went to Calanmai and you got the traitors and you did what you went out there to do, just so it didn't seem so suspicious that he had been out there. Plus, he wanted to kill them anyways for the thoughts they were thinking about Feyre.
Yeah,
Then there's the encounter at summer solstice. And Rhysand says to her, I had no idea that you were staying at the spring court. Though, where else would she be staying? But
yeah,
anywho, he had no idea that she would still be there when he comes to check in on Tamlin, because Amarantha wanted him to go back because he had been so successful on Calanmai that now, after summer solstice, she wants him to do another little check in because now the deadline is super close.
yeah,
And Rhysand, when he realizes that Feyre is there, we already know this. He was fucking pissed. And he felt sick that Feyre was looking at Tamlin like she loved him.
yeah,
And so he knew that he had to scare Tamlin and Feyre that she needed to go away. He needed to send Feyre away because when Amarantha found her, Feyre was dead.
yeah.
Which brings us to Claire Better.
Yes.
Rhysand shows up to trash the manor with Amarantha's goonies, basically, to make sure that Feyre was no longer there, which she wasn't. But he had no idea that Amarantha would go into the mortal realm to grab Claire Better and bring her under the mountain. He also didn't know that Claire was a real person. He thought
Yeah,
that she just made up a name because he knew that she lied about what her name was. He knew that her name wasn't Claire. And so he thought that this was just some made up person.
yeah,
And then Of course, as Amanda explained to us earlier about what Rhysand did for Claire while under the mountain was just the best that he could do.
Yeah. But I also
Then
feel so much better about the situation with her, knowing that that's what he
mhm,
did. And I'm sure Feyre felt some relief as well. I mean, it doesn't make what she did or what he did okay, but at least Claire went without any pain and suffering. No.
yeah, they both basically have tears in their eyes at this point,
Yeah.
Feyre and
Yeah.
Rhysand, of him
Yeah.
telling this story. It's
Mhm.
just so emotional and raw, and
I
so
know. I'm
much has
about to tear
happened.
up myself right now. No, I'm just kidding. But the first time I read it, I definitely did. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Rhysand then says he has never known such horror than when the Ator brought Feyre into the throne room under the mountain. He thought, I'll never see her again, but she's safe and that's fine. But here she is coming to save Tamlin, and now
Yeah.
he has to watch as the Ator literally beats the shit out of her
Mm.
in the
That was
throne room,
probably
and he can't do
so
anything about
hard.
it.
That was probably so
Hmm.
hard for him.
Yes.
That was
And
hard
he
for
knew
me to
he,
read. I can't imagine loving her and watching it. Ugh.
yeah,
And he had to watch it.
no.
He couldn't look away. It would give away that they were mated.
Mhm. He
But
has to have that mask on.
yeah.
Then her first trial comes, and he's like, I had to play the part of you hating me. You already hated me, so I played into it. And he was like, I needed to find a way in with you. So when you were injured after the first trial, I made the bargain with you. And basically, the bargain is nothing, he tells us. Like, it's like a cobweb based, like,
Yeah.
compared to what their bond is.
Yeah.
And Rhysand was jealous and pissed off at Tamlin for what he did that last night before the final trial. Instead of trying to save Feyre, he just tried to fuck her.
Yeah. That's so fucking annoying. I hate Tamlin.
And Amarantha, though, saw the jealousy in Rhysand because of the interaction she walked in on between Feyre and Rhysand. And
Hmm.
so that night, Amarantha made Rhysand service her, which we knew.
Right.
And that's when he ends up back in her cell later that night saying, that bitch is running me ragged or something to that
Yeah.
effect. He does think about telling her right there and then after that night in her cell, but he doesn't. And
Yeah.
then her final trial comes. That's when something snapped into place for him because when Amarantha was torturing Feyre, he was like, I've had it. And when she snapped her neck, if Feyre was going to die, he was going to die with her. So that's why he picks up the dagger from Tamlin and starts running at Amarantha. He's like, if my mate, because he knows at this point, is going to
Yeah.
die, then I'm dying with her, which is just like so fucking heartbreaking.
I know.
And then Feyre's neck snapped. And Rhysand's like, I felt you die. And this gift he thought he received from the cauldron was gone. Because he already said, everything I've ever loved in
Yeah.
my life always gets taken away from me. And here's
Yeah.
just another example because she was already taken away from him once. She died
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he felt it.
Yeah.
So he grabbed onto the bond, tugged on it with all of his might to make her stay, to see if there was some way that he could bring her back. And if he could do it, he was going to do it. So obviously, we know Tamlin gets his power back, Amarantha gets killed, and like you said earlier, Rhysand goes mind to mind with all of the High Lords to have them step forward to give her a kernel of their power to bring her back and as a High Fae, which is so funny because I kind of even forgot about that part because when we were talking about it at the end of ACOTAR, I was like, oh, I think it's so interesting that Lucian's dad stepped forward first. But it's just interesting because out of all of them, just thinking about, because I know them, I think he would be the most resistant. But like he said in his little monologue, he thinks that everyone was just so confused and that she had just saved all of them that it was kind of a no brainer to then save her life.
Yeah.
So after Amarantha's dead, he's like, I knew I needed to meet with you one last time before he went back to the night court. And he thought about again telling her then, but she was just so sad and so
Yeah.
broken that they had kind of a moment together, and he didn't really want to ruin that because he felt like, oh, she sees me as not an enemy right now. She sees me as like an ally or a friend, and he didn't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
And that's when he's like, okay, I need to leave. And that's when he mocks that fake bow to her. And as
Yeah.
he does that, their eyes lock. And that's when the bond snaps into place for him. And he's like, I immediately had to leave because if I waited one more second, I would have grabbed you and taken you. And then it just would have been bad for everybody.
Yeah, and I think too it just shows his character again. He was going to give her the choice, and even if he did tell her, it's kind of like taking that choice away from her because she was so ready to spend her life with Tamlin. You know what I mean? So now even
Mm-hmm.
telling her this information is going to make her question her life decisions basically at this point. She really does believe she's going to marry. She starts to walk down the aisle. So I feel like it's just being true to himself that he wants her to decide, and he can't tell her until he knows that she's going to be able to make a decision for herself.
Yeah. So he arrives back in the night court, and the first thing he says to Moore after not seeing her for 50 years is, she's my mate. And he's like
Mhm.
hysterical. And she's like, oh my God. So that's the reason why Moore knows, is because it was
Yeah.
literally word vomit the second he landed back in the night court.
He probably had to tell
Then
someone at that point because he had to control himself to not go get her and bring her back over to the night court.
I wish he just had.
I know. I wish he had too, but I get why he didn't because ultimately it has to be her choice what she does with her life.
Yeah. So for months after Under the Mountain, he tried to convince himself that she was better off without him and that, he could feel her sadness and just everything she was feeling through the bond. But he felt that staying away was the best. And on the
Mhm.
day of her wedding to Tamlin, he planned on getting rip roaring drunk with Cassian and trying not to feel anything through the bond. But that's when he heard her say, help me. Anybody, please save me. And he's like, oh,
Mhm.
it's my time to shine.
Yep.
Here we go.
He's like,
And
"Finally,
so
let's go."
yeah, he's like, I even forgot who I was supposed to be playing when I got there. I was just so panicked to get to you after your plea that I had to remember, oh shit, I'm the High Lord of the Night Court. I'm this
Yeah.
bad guy to everyone. I'm not this good person and your mate.
Yeah. Oh.
He also tells her that it killed him to send her back to Tamlin in the spring court every time.
Mhm.
He knew she was wasting away, and it was just a really difficult thing for him to do, but he wasn't going to let her out of the bargain. It was his only way to keep his eyes on her, basically.
Yeah, or at least to feed her once a month.
Yeah. And then this is where he says he knew he was in love with her the second he picked up the knife to kill Amarantha, but he decided he wouldn't tell her when she first got there because her hatred was better than facing the alternative. Then she felt nothing at all, or if she felt something similar, if he loved her, she would be taken away. So it's just those insecurities again coming into
Yeah.
place.
Mhm.
And then the day Tamlin locked her in the house is where we're all coming full circle on the story. He said he would have killed him if Tamlin had been there that day when he locked her up, if he hadn't have left. And this
Yeah.
is the part where Amryn advised that if he could get Feyre to admit that they were mates, then trouble would stay away from their doorstep, but he didn't want to force the bond on her. So it's interesting that Amryn would say that when I don't know if she knew for sure until she met Feyre from the sniffing. But
Yeah. Well, maybe she just overheard, maybe from more. They all talk, I'm sure. Because he
I'm
does
it
say that Cassian and Nazriel suspect it too, but they don't know for sure. So maybe she just didn't know for sure at this point.
yeah, I think maybe she suspected just from his reactions of Feyre.
Yeah.
And especially if Feyre's being
Yeah.
locked in a house having a full blown panic attack. Like I'm sure he was like going fucking bananas.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely was.
Yes. But he didn't want Feyre to ever think that he was doing all of this to win her, but he couldn't stop being around her, loving her, and wanting her. And this is when she
Yeah.
ladles the soup into the bowl and brings the bowl to the table and says, so you love me? And he nods, and then she tells him to eat.
Yes! Sarah, I love you, Sarah.
Such a good no. The best chapter ever. 55 is such a dream for everybody because it is. It's sexy.
I think I totally agree with you. 54 is the best chapter.
She could feel the bond between them and their senses merging. And she says, I was his and he was mine, and we were the beginning and middle and end. And then he tells her when he fell in love with her, which we already know this, but it's different from. Wait, hold on. Before we say this line, he tells her he knew he loved her when Amarantha was killing her, but now he says something different.
Well, he loved her or he knew she was his mate?
No, he says he knew he was in love with her the second he picked up the knife to kill Amarantha.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Interessante. Resand?
He says that he thinks that he was falling in love with her when she was literally putting together her trap for the Midgard worm with the bones. And then she flicked him off and it reminded him of Cassian. And she's like, what do you
Yes.
mean I remind you of Cassian?
Yeah. And this is my notable line for chapter 55, page 534. Rhysand says, I fell in love with you, smartass, because you were one of us, because you weren't afraid of me, and you decided to end your spectacular victory by throwing that piece of bone at Amarantha like a javelin. I felt Cassian's spirit beside me in that moment and could have sworn I heard him say, if you don't marry her, you stupid prick, I will.
It's so
I love that. He was obviously missing his friends too. It had been 50 years under the mountain.
They then decide to go take a bath, and she says that she had been falling in love with him for a while, but she knew on Starfall, but she was just scared. Rhysand says, well, you had a perfectly good reason to avoid it. And she says, no, it has nothing to do with you, that she was never afraid of the consequences of being with him. Even if every assassin in the world hunts them, being with him is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they talk about what comes next. And he's like, well, I'll call you mate, but calling you wife would be equally as cool. And we can do this event and we can go see a high priestess and then we can throw a wedding or we can do whatever you want. And she's like, no, I meant like, what are we doing about the upcoming war? But she's glad she had so many options about when it came to their relationship.
Yeah.
He then tells her that they will be leaving tomorrow to go back to the mortal realm because the queen's finally answered. Then they have some more sex. During this sexy moment, she starts glowing. They literally only get 1 hour of sleep because of all the sexy sex they're having. And he tells her that it's normal because of the mating bond. And that's what always happens at the beginning, that there's always this frenzy. He then says, please be patient with me because I'm going to be on edge. They then talk about pregnancy, which she says kind of splashes ice cold water over the both of them. And they decide that even though maybe one day they would have a child and would feel so blessed to have a baby together because they're just so rare and precious, that they want to live their life for now. And she wants to figure out being immortal, and there's a war coming, so now's not the best time for Rhysand to have a pregnant mate
or bring children into the world.
Exactly. So she decides she'll start taking the tonic when they get back, but it's just nice to see them having normal coupley relationship talks.
Yeah, and thinking of their future together.
It's just so beautiful. She then goes to take another bath, but obviously follows her and they have some more sex.
Yes, sexy time times 100.
In this chapter. And that is the end of our chapters for this episode.
Yay! And the next time we're doing chapter coverage is the end of A Court of Mist and Fury. Yes. I cannot wait to start reading it. But before we do that, let's go over the predictions that I've had. After reading part 1, I thought that Feyre would actually become the first High Lady of Prythian. Still gonna happen. I also thought that Ianthe is working with the King of Hybern, and I still think that. 100%, and I'll explain why. After reading part 2, I thought that Rhys and Feyre were actually a mated bond, and I was finally fucking right about this. It finally comes to light that they were already a mated bond. Pretty much, actually, it happens before for Rhysand, I guess, before they even meet. So, yeah, I was fucking right. I'm gonna keep saying it until the day I die. No, I'm just kidding. No, but honestly, if I had to be right about any prediction, this one was even better than being right about this riddle.
No.
Amarantha's
Yeah.
riddle. Like, so
So
much
much
better.
better.
Yeah. After reading part 3, I thought that something was up with the Lord and his son that set to met Elaine, which I still think there's something there for sure. Cassian and Nesta. I do think there's some foreshadowing there, but I think this section specifically was a Rhysand and Favor moment. So I think we'll get more of that in the future for sure. After reading part 4, I thought that Favor would get a set of wings, which I was fucking right about too. Let's go. Go, Amanda. Go, Amanda. It's your birthday. It's your birthday. And then I also had an interesting thought about who was working with the king. I came up with 3 answers. Number 1 was Ianthe. And I thought that before part 4. I thought that way back in part 2. And now I feel like I'm more convinced after reading this section because I do believe Ianthe is the one that tipped off Lucian and the Sentinels to where she was. And the only way that Ianthe would know that would be from working with the King of Hybern because he was the one that was tracking Rhysand's magic. I definitely think that connection is real. Then I thought Mora's father here was involved with the King of Hybern, and this might be completely wrong or it's gonna fucking blow your mind, but I think that he is working with the king and he is the reason why they're able to track Rhysand. And I think there's something there with maybe like family blood or something, some kind of spell that was done that he gave him the ability to track Rhysand's powers in the first place. So, and I hope I'm right about that because that would be epic if I guessed that. And third is the Autumn Court. And I only think this because Rhysand is being tracked. And I think his whole deal with Mor and Eris and saving her from him and all that stuff, I think might have a connection to why they hate him or might be why they're working against him. So that's why he's there. But I'm really more confident in the first 2 answers. And after reading this part 5, I mean, after chapter 54, my mind was blown. So I really had no idea what I was even going to say for this section, for these predictions, because I was just so overwhelmed.
Yes.
After I calmed down for a little bit, I was thinking, what can I predict? And I really do have a bad feeling about these queens. I don't think we're going to get access to this book when they return. And I think that telling them about Valeris will backfire. It's not going to be good. I don't want to say they're working with the King of Hybern, but I think the King of Hybern is going to find out this information if they tell the queens about Valeris. I just don't like it. I don't like anything about it. And I know they have to prove it to him that he's a good man, but I just think this is a bad idea. I can't put my finger on why, but I really just think it's a bad
I think
idea.
anytime you're giving up the secret of the city, it's probably not the best idea.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think maybe they won't even need the other half. As I started on this train, I kept going. And maybe Amren will decode it enough and be able to use its full power or be able to understand what the rest of it must mean if she can decode it or something of that sort. Like maybe they'll still be able to nullify the cauldron with only half the book. And I'm also going to predict that we actually meet the King of Hybern or someone in his command before this book ends. I know there's a huge cliffhanger, and I just think I'm going towards this route that it's going to be something that has to do with the war and with the king or someone in his command, meaning like it's going to be a shock that we see this person, whether it's someone who I suspect is working with him, whether it's Jurian or the king or someone, like something fucking nuts is going to happen.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you this. Something fucking nuts is going to happen.
Yes. And I can't wait. So we need to wrap this up so I can go read the last section of this book.
Let's wrap this up.
And that is all we have for you today. I am so excited. I think I can speak for us both when I say that we are so excited to finish reading ACOMAF. I cannot believe we're already at the end of book 2, and I'm mentally preparing myself for an epic ending. And I need to get there. So we really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving us a review and comments on any of the platforms you're listening/watching on or on our social media pages. This helps tremendously to get the word out and lead more listeners to find our show and tune in.
Yes, you're immediately going to want us to not do a Final Thoughts episode on this book and to start ACOWAR, but anywho, we are going to do our Final Thoughts episode anyways. Don't forget to email, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and tell all your friends about us. Have a blissful day. Bye!
Bye! Thank you so much for listening. Join us next week for part 6 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, covering chapters 56 through 69. Happy reading!